COVID is the same. So if you have one student with COVID in a classroom of children under the age of 12, none of whom are vaccinated, and there's no protections to stop them from catching it, 90% of them will get it by the end of that day. A mask is an easy step to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Joey Joyce.
Hello. So my name is Joey. I'll be a junior starting in the fall for Schenectady High School. And my issue is revolved around students' voices morally. You know, this whole COVID, pandemic has not only put me, but my friends at, mental health issues. Why? Because we are shoved on a computer for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and we stare in the dark at a screen. Now, what I've heard is that we're going back to school. We don't know the decisions on masks so far. I've watched the last meeting we had, I've watched, and we don't know a decision yet, but we gotta think though, if we're really talking on a subject of getting sick and all that, you guys wanna trust in science and wanna make sure every kid's safe and healthy to go back in school, I get it. But you have to understand is that I went to Schenectady High School for 9th grade on. I've gotten sick, I've taken precautions, I even caught COVID, stayed home for 2 weeks, treated it like a normal virus, whatever. We are going to get sick, whether it's, it hits us in the face or not. But what is worse? Getting sick for a few days or having a mental health issue for the rest of our lives? I've become more socially awkward with what I do and say, everything. So that's what my concern is around, letting children's voices be heard. Because last year we weren't so heard and everything like that, and all I got is, oh, I'm sorry, maybe we could do something. I'm done hearing that. Like, I'm done hearing everybody being like, oh, I'm sorry for you, but we can't do anything. It's, it's the year 21. I mean, we've came and adapted so far, and, and it's like, why don't we do something? You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of just listening to the teachers, listen to the kids. Be like, hey, okay, this teacher said that, but how do you feel on it? Ask me how I feel about it. How do I feel about last year? Terrible. I feel terrible. I did not learn a single thing. I passed my classes, all my classes like usual. I try never to fail a class. I've never failed a class in high school, and I'm genuinely scared about starting 11th grade because we have SATs, we have all this stuff looking forward to. I'm worried because we didn't get what we were supposed to get 10th grade. I don't care how we go back. I don't care what is it. Me and my friends, we choose to just go back normally. I want to go back normally. I think going back normally is the best thing because, yeah, we might have, kids getting sick and all that, but can you blame us though? Like, we've been stuck in a house strapped up with a mask for, 10, 14 months? Like, we're gonna get sick. It's how the immune system works and everything and above. So if we're gonna make a decision on masks, I think all the fine members of this community and our, parents and children should be, hey, children, how do you feel about the masks? How do you feel about masking up for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? You know what I'm saying? So kind of start listening to us more than, oh, we're just going to take the teacher's words on it. We're taking all this. I respect every teacher. They have a hard day. I get it, especially in the high school. Trust me, especially in the high school. But we have to understand is that it's not the adults' choices. We're going into the school. They drop us off for the 8 hours we have. So I think if you're going to make a decision, just know that I think the best way to please everybody is just being like, hey, I'm going to send you all home and you guys can make the decisions for yourself. We're going to get sick. We're going to, have all these issues, obviously. I mean, I want to get sick. It's my immune system. I don't want to, go 50 years without getting sick, then getting hit with a sickness and then dying from the sickness. Of course you're going to die from the sickness. You haven't gotten it yet. That's how you become immune. I had COVID. I'm immune to it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, all this crap. So I think the best way to decide on something like this, especially on a very touchy topic, is being like, I'm not going to deal with it, just push it and let the parents do it. Let the parents talk to the children and see how the children want to do it. That's the plan. You know, just listen to the children a bit more. Because again, we go to school. It's not just the teachers that go to school for 8 hours. We go to school and we have to face all these problems and all these puberty issues and crap.
Joey, I
you
need
know?
you to wrap up your comments, so please,
But
thank you.
you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the issue. Just push more on the students. So I don't want to not be asked, well, how do you feel about it? I want to be asked those questions. I want to have stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Joey. Kate Clifford. Kate Clifford, I'm sorry, didn't see her.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We had a really rough last year as in one of the grade schools, and we found it really, really hard to find a parent advocate to talk to. When you have a problem between a teacher and a student, you really have nobody. I tried calling the superintendent's office, obviously you weren't there last year, and he was never available. And I understand he was intern, but we had some huge issues that really needed to be resolved. So what I'm asking is, I'm hoping that you'll consider maybe having a parent advocate in each one of the schools, like the hospital have patient advocates. So somebody you can go to and talk to, and maybe they can give you some answers and field out some of these problems that really don't need to go to the superintendent, but we need to be heard. So that's my only suggestion, and I hope that you'll consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Monaco.
My name is Susan Monaco. I live in the Central Park area. My grandson is in Central Park, and he has asthma. One, I don't know how he would do for so many hours with a mask on, but we have not been immunized because he lives with his grandparents. We have the usual heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, all that. Well, we chose not to be vaccinated, and we're just wondering whether you would consider having a virtual option. If there were enough parents out there and grandparents that are behind me in that way of thinking, to still keep it virtual, if there were enough, because it doesn't seem like all the children can be in the school. If there's 3 feet distancing, that it might actually be a good option for some of the kids to stay home. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Heather Hutchison.
Good evening. I'm a parent to a 7th grader at Central Park Middle School and a 10th grader here at the high school. I'd like to address the general topic of communication and transparency. I've grown more and more frustrated with our school district and its lack of cohesive communication at all levels. And listening to some of the other comments, it's clear that other people have the same issue. Never has communication been more important than in the middle of this pandemic. Parents need to know that they are sending their children into a safe school environment where their children will be nurtured and understood. I've appreciated Superintendent Solaire's weekly briefs. I hope it will set the expectation for each building principal to regularly communicate with their parents via multiple means. This has not been the case every year. I hope that we'll move forward with expectations that communication on an internal level too, between administrators and teachers, the school board and the public, and everyone collaboratively will lead to a more positive environment. When the district announces its reopening plans, I hope that several items will be addressed for the upcoming school year, clear expectations for mask wearing for all students and staff, and how this will be enforced, clear guidelines for keeping students safe, and by safe I don't just mean about COVID, I mean physically, emotionally safe, clear guidelines for when and how a class or specific students will be quarantined, clear guidelines for remote learning if a student is quarantined, how the district will engage and communicate with parents and keep them up to date on changes, and how the district will address the social emotional learning of our children, especially when so many of them have much higher needs than pre-pandemic. I also hope that the school district will continue to seek input for the additional foundation aid that we've received. Hint, sending out one survey to parents with a reminder is not enough to get true community input. On a somewhat related topic, there's been a lot of confusion with, on the middle school level regarding music ensembles. Very little has been communicated to parents about changes in the middle school schedule. There's been an added period to the day. I was confused to learn that my 7th grader, despite playing an instrument, is being scheduled for general music, and that band, orchestra, and choir are not being added as a period during his day. We are one of few school districts in the entire state that does not schedule instrumental ensembles as a period in the day. When I asked an administrator why they weren't making this change, when they're adding this additional period, I was merely told that they're scheduling an enrichment intervention period, but not what the purpose of this period is. Why can't instrumental music be scheduled as an appropriate intervention or enrichment? That's what it is. In addition, it appears that each middle school is handling this 9-period day differently. That's not equitable to our students across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Holly Loth.
Hi, I have a rising 8th grader at Central Park Middle and a rising 5th grader at Howe. And I'm very concerned because of the messaging that has come out so far from the district that we are in grave danger of learning the wrong lesson from last year. I'm seeing a lot of how committed we are to being in person, that seems to be the top priority. And my feeling is, were remote and hybrid challenging last year? Absolutely. And was remote completely insufficient for some children? Absolutely. But having those options last year kept our kids safe. I believe it is insane to send unvaccinated under 12s into already overcrowded buildings with janky old HVAC systems when the Delta variant is spreading like wildfire and kids are getting very ill. Please give us building-specific remote options so that the kids for whom that worked okay can stay home full-time or part-time, which keeps them safer. And then, of course, having fewer kids in the building keeps everybody in the building safer. The BOCES option is not enough. It is hard on some families to get a doctor's note, and it's a significant disadvantage to be in a virtual classroom with children that you don't know, with teachers and staff who don't know you or your family. Not to mention the racism and classism that many of our kids will face when they're dealing with teachers who haven't had DEI training or experience teaching kids who are coming from experiences of trauma and poverty. Speaking of which, it's also very important to make staffing the DEI office a high priority. We need building-specific, quarter-by-quarter remote and hybrid options in September, and we need specific plans based on community spread, case rates, and testing for taking individual buildings and the district as a whole into remote only. We need to know that when case rates hit X, we enact Plan B, and when Y number of kids test positive at Z building, that building goes into Plan C, etc. Last year, we had a less transmissible virus. The virus was effectively stopped by even crappy masks, This year, we have a more transmissible Delta variant. The new variant needs high-quality respirator-type masks worn properly to fully protect the people who are masking. Last year, kids were mostly not getting sick. Kids were not getting long COVID, and very, very few kids ended up in critical condition. This year, kids are testing positive. Kids are spreading the virus. Kids are getting long COVID, and kids are ending up on ventilators and in morgues. Last year, in the middle of August, we had a 7-day average of 8 new cases per 100,000 residents in Schenectady County. This year, it's 40. It's 5 times higher. We have 5 times the spread this year, this year, than we did last year. Last year, we had remote and hybrid options, and our kids were safe. We learned a lot of lessons about what worked and what didn't. This year, our kids under 12 are in much greater danger. Please give us at least as much commitment to safety as you gave us last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. Charlene Inglesby.
Hi, my name is Charlene. I have 2 children in the district, one in elementary and one in middle, and my daughter graduated the class of 2020. I am here today to have you guys rethink about having a remote option for this year. There are a lot of families out here who are just not ready and do not feel safe taking the risk having our children return to school. There's families who their parents and caregivers do have underlying health conditions that they need to worry about the children bringing that home to them. Children who have asthma and other underlying health conditions that do not qualify for the BOCES option, because I did look into that. I know for a fact that my 2nd grader will not wear a mask all day. There is no way. And the school that he attends is extremely hot all year round. My 8th grader, he suffers from severe allergies, a very wide range. He cannot be vaccinated. So he is worried himself. He expressed to me himself that he is not comfortable returning to school. I feel right now, after looking into all the options, that it is only for us parents to decide, send them in for in-person learning or choose to homeschool. And that's not something that I want to do. I want my kids to learn the Schenectady curriculum. I want them to stay up to par with what they're supposed to be. My son actually came to me, my 8th grader, and he said, "Mom, you know what? If the school's not going to offer remote and homeschooling is going to be too hard for you, I'll just go and I'll suffer through it." I do not feel that any child should feel that they're going to suffer going to school, because the severity of his allergies causes him to be congested every day, sneezing every day. So now I have to put him in a mask, which heightens that. And how often is a nurse going to call me and send him home and say he can't return until he's been tested? I ask you guys, please, reconsider. There's so many other families out here who are just not ready to send their children back. Give us better give us the guidelines of what you're doing. You know, what have you done to the schools? Have you changed the air systems in the schools? What's out there? Nothing is ready for, out there for us to even understand how safe the school is actually going to be for our kids to return, and school's in 3 weeks. So like I said, I ask you, please just reconsider, because I do understand the importance of in-person learning, all of it, the social aspect, the teacher to child, I do understand. But some of these kids are not ready. Some of these parents are not ready. Please, hear our voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, everyone. At this time, the superintendent. Oh, 2 statements, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Martha.
To the Board of Education, these are actually 2.
There is someone raising their hand, but they were too afraid to interrupt.
We'll have a second opportunity for comments later.
These comments were emailed to me during the day today from people who could not attend this evening. To the Board of Education, we are parents of 2 elementary school children who will be attending Howe Elementary School this year. We cannot attend the board meeting tonight, but we wanted to write to express our strong support for the district adopting safety measures equivalent to those announced by the Niskayuna School District yesterday. Masking, reasonable levels of social distancing, pool testing of unvaccinated teachers and students, and so on. Undoubtedly, you will be hearing from parents who oppose requiring masks for their children. We ask you to keep in mind that the main benefit of masking is preventing transmission from an infected person wearing a mask to another person. It is a matter of protecting the school community, not simply an individual choice about level of risk. As such, it's equivalent to the existing requirements for a whole host of vaccinations required for school attendance. These are requirements designed to ensure the safety of everybody at the school. Nobody enjoys wearing masks, but it is a small price to pay for students to be able to attend in person and to keep the schools open once school starts. Schools across the South that have opened without mask requirements are already having to abruptly pivot to virtual education due to high levels of transmission of the virus. Surely, anything we can do to keep the kids safe and to prevent a whiplash transition from in-person to remote is well worth it. There is a widespread public support for these common sense precautions in the service of a safe, in-person school experience. Please don't be swayed by the voices of a vocal minority. And this was from Andrew Morris and Mary Moore Wallinger. The second comment, to the Board of Education. We are the parents of a student scheduled to enter the 6th grade at Oneida Middle School. I'm deeply concerned about the district's plans for the upcoming school year. Though the district made it through last year without any serious outbreaks among students, that was with far fewer students attending in-person school and a far less contagious variant. The strict limits on the number of students allowed to attend virtual classes this year suggest that the majority of students will be back to in-person learning, meaning kids won't have much, if any, room to social distance. Maybe the superintendent will share more details tonight, but I need to hear more than that students will need to wear masks. To me, that is the bare minimum we should be doing. I want to know, has the district done anything to improve the ventilation in any or all of the buildings? Can the district be nimble in responding to exposures and outbreaks, moving kids either individually and/or as a class from in-person learning to virtual learning? Sending exposed kids home with just a handful of worksheets and no teacher to provide instruction is not enough. Has the district developed a system to establish when schools will be closed and students sent to virtual learning? For instance, if a certain percentage of students in a school are exposed or infected, will that school close for a certain number of weeks? Or if the number of cases per 100,000 people locally rises to a certain number, will all district schools close until the number of cases falls below that level? Does the district plan to promptly inform parents of exposures and infections at school? This seemed to happen last year, but I know there were infections at the summer enrichment program that were not publicly reported. I hope any plan the district develops is based on the best science available and that any changes to the plan are communicated to parents well in advance and not, as in the case at summer enrichment program, after the fact. Our kids and our teachers deserve better than bare minimum in safety requirements. And that was from Jillian Scott and Herb Turns. And I just also want to mention that the folks who did already speak this evening, if you have written your comments, if you have a written copy of those, I would appreciate those so they can be concluded with the minutes of this meeting.
I will take the person who wanted to speak at this point because our agenda is quite long. Our second comment period is very late. So come forward, please. You'll have to tell me who you are and your address and topic. Mike would be helpful. Felicia?
Hi, everybody. My name is Felicia Chandler, address 236 Park Place.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
236 Park Place, Schenectady, New York.
Felicia Chandler?
Yes, Felicia Chandler.
Okay. Thank you, Felicia. And your comments?
Yes, everybody, my complaint about is the transportation. I am not happy with the school transportation department. Because first of all, I have two boys. One of them is special ed, so they send them to Woodlawn. The other one is going to be sent to Yates. So I was talking to somebody today on the phone, and she said, well, you don't like it. You can take your, dismiss your kid from special ed and put him in Yates so they'll be in the same school. So the transportation department
Wait,
told
I need you to slow down a little bit because we're not hearing you very well through the mask. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Please.
Where do you want me to go back to? The beginning of the transportation?
I know you're not happy with the transportation department and something about a special ed student going to Woodlawn, I think.
So, basically what I'm trying to say is that one of my son is special ed. The other one is not anymore. He was. And he is now going to Woodlawn, which is fine. And my other son, they told me he's going to Yates. So, I asked the school district if they could send them to both of the same school because they both are the same age and they're twins. And it would be a lot more easier that they're in the same school because the school they went to before was Zoller and they were very happy with them in the same class. And it worked out very good for Joshua, because my other son, he gets very stressed. So what happened when I talked to the transportation board and I asked them about where they're going to get picked up, they said, well, your one son getting picked up in front of your house, the other one getting picked up around the corner. I said, well, is there any way that we can work something up in the same bus? They said, well, it is what it is, ma'am. All the parents are going through this. So more or less, I'm pretty perturbed at the department because my son Joshua is very attention deficit. And I really feel that the school should have made accommodation for him to be in the same school with his brother, which is Woodlawn. And I feel very cheated by the school district that they say that to me about my son who is special ed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Felicia. Was there someone else? Yes.
Thank you for accepting this. Christine Moore, 1801 Lennox.
Christine Moore
Yes,
and 1801 Lennox?
correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to address the virtual option. I'm also a teacher who works with some Schenectady High School students and have talked to students myself. Some students just like the option better because they're concerned with bullying. So I love the ideas of having a virtual option, not only for COVID, but because COVID presents an opportunity to think about different learners and how some learners learn better in different environments. The second piece that I'd like to address is the Bridging the Gap program. I have 4 kids, one graduated. I have 3 left in the district, and 2 of them benefited from participating in the Bridging the Gap program. And when asked if that was an option, they said absolutely that's what their preference would be. So Learning Pod, they participated with Liberty Church. It was an excellent experience because it was a small group of kids. It was safe. They enjoyed the virtual education. It just worked for them, that environment. So diversifying learning environments, because they don't all meet every kid's needs. I'm hoping that, again, COVID presents opportunities, not just problems that need to be solved, but opportunities to think differently about how we do education. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll be closing public comment, and I will turn it over to the superintendent.
I think there was one more person that there was one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll take one more. The norm is that we need to have you come in advance to sign up, and would appreciate it for the future so that we know. Thank you. Of course.
My name is David Hurd. I live at 1125 Chrysler Avenue, Schenectady.
What was the last name, David?
Hurd, H-U-R-D.
H-U-R-D?
Yes.
Okay.
My daughter she plays volleyball. She's 11th grade this year. She's in the advanced class, so she's going to graduate, actually doing the Young Scholars.
Young Scholars, yeah.
Yep, she's there. She plays volleyball. This will be her 3rd year. She got a text message from her coach saying that you might be requiring vaccination for her to be able to play sports. Is that true? Is that be something that's going to be required? I've left the vaccination up to her. It's her choice. I made my choice. It's up to her. I don't think you should be forced into something. And if you take volleyball away, that's, not a good thing. You shouldn't be forcing anyone to do something. Masking, that's fine. She has no problem with the masking. I don't know where she completely stands on the vaccine. Again, that's her decision, but she told me, I don't know. She said, it's not even like I have a choice now. If I don't get it and they're requiring it, then I can't play volleyball. I think that's wrong, and that really needs to be addressed and thought over. I mean, I totally understand the world has been really crazy for the last 18 months. But again, that's taking a choice away from somebody that shouldn't be taken away.
Thank you, David. Okay, now we will turn it over to Anibal.
A couple things for just commentary. I will be presenting after we have a couple other presentations, and I would encourage, and I know the time can get late, so I apologize. The presentation will be online under our board docs, so you'll be able to review it, but I will be kind of addressing some of the things. We typically don't respond to comments, but I work for the community, and I want to make sure that you understand that we will be addressing many of the things that are brought up here. So it is a difficult topic, but I'm here to make, unfortunately, some difficult decisions, and I know not everybody will support them, but I want you to know that we take the safety of the students extremely seriously, and we won't have all the answers, but we're going to work and continue to work to make sure that we give kids the best opportunity to have exposure to our teachers, to our administrators, and I've said this numerous times in my weekly updates, so I'm glad people are getting them. I heard that reference, for them to be in person, because we're going to have to figure out how to move forward as an organization. So if you can stick around, you'll hear more around reopening, which I know is a lot, but I do want to make some general comments before we move on to some of the other comment sections. First, I want to congratulate our class of 2020 summer graduates from Schenectady High School seniors who graduated last week in person here, had a great ceremony that was held here at the high school last Thursday. If you had an opportunity to watch it, it was live streamed. I thank the board members who were able to attend as well and support our scholars. Those students, they should be very proud. I often tell them, it doesn't matter when you graduate, what matters is that you graduated, and that's what matters. No one never asks you when you go for a job, was it in June, or was it in August, or did it take you 5 years? All they care about is that you graduated. So I want those kids to hold their heads high on their resilience. I also want to thank the staff and families for making the summer enrichment program an amazing success. I was able to visit NIDA's program. I think we went live on Facebook there, talked to some kids. You never know what you're going to get asked. So if you had an opportunity to follow that, there'll be more of those as we move on. I also want to make sure that I clarify, because I did hear some commentary about cases being done there. I think those cases happened multiple days after the program was done. They were same household type cases. When we did the contract tracing, unfortunately that stuff doesn't come out sometimes in those articles, but I do want to make sure that we were aware. They did not happen there. We didn't have anybody contract trace, but unfortunately we don't have the ability to sometimes tell our story 100%. But I will tell you there were a handful of cases. We did inform them as they happened. And I want to thank our staff and our partners, though, more importantly, for making those programs fun, safe, engaging. Kids were outside, they were inside, they were doing a variety of programs. And most of the time when I talk to those kids, they don't care about masks. They care about is seeing their peers, being back with teachers, and being in our schools. Because to the comment earlier, they do get tired of looking at the monitor. Our 2021 Spotlight will be in Schenectady mailboxes very soon. I think you will like to see that despite a tough year virtually, remotely, a very odd year, that some positive things still came about with our students. So that publication does tell our story. It does start to talk about some of the things that, some of my goals, some of the things that I'm looking to bring forward to the district, and celebrates all the current accomplishments of staff, students in the district. So please watch for that within the next week. You'll be getting that. And I think that goes out to about 60,000 Schenectady residents. So it does not just focus on district families, but everybody in the city. Last but not least, an important update for our Oneida Students for Anti-Racism, or OSAR. They are a finalist for a grant with State Farm for $25,000. I'm making a shameless plug here to all of you in the audience and to those watching. Please go online and vote. You can see it on our Facebook page. It's on our website. Support our kids. Voting goes through August 27th. You can place up to 10 votes a day. So we're going to try to work the system as much as possible, get our kids $25,000 to do some really great things. They did a great mural I was able to see. They're doing some great work in the building. And so when we talk about student voice, that's been great. And the link is on our website, again, in our social media. Those are all my comments for now.
Thank you. Erica.
I'm always first. No. I'll keep it brief. Congrats again to the graduates who just graduated this last week in August. I got to visit a few summer enrichment programs, and it was really great to see the kids, what they were participating in, and talking to the staff there, and I appreciate just being welcome and explaining the programs. And the bookmobile was also really awesome. It was great talking to those individuals and learning more about what books they pick and why. And I was at a middle school when I went, and they were competing with an ice cream truck, bookmobile or ice cream truck. But it was nice to see the kids going to the bookmobile first and then over to the ice cream truck. So just thank you to everyone who welcomed me and talked to me when I was at the visits. That's all.
Ann?
Okay, you covered a few of my things that I was going to mention, but I did want to say that I've seen some schools are holding open houses for families and students. I know tomorrow night, I believe, is Central Park Middle School from 4 to 6. So I saw that on social media. I think there's probably information on the website as well about that. I was going to mention that high school sports start on the 23rd and middle school sports start on the 30th, and encourage kids to go out and try something new. I particularly am a fan of cross country. Anybody can do it. And I think everything else was covered. I did want to mention, Anibal, that I have gotten a lot of positive feedback about your briefs. So I just wanted to
Thank you.
say that. That's all.
Jamaica.
Hey, good evening, y'all. What's up, board members? The first thing I'm going to say every single time is thank you to every person that came up and spoke, because whether it's the first time that you've ever spoken in public or it's the 100th time that you spoke in public, it is not an easy thing, and I know that because I'm a public speaker. So thank you for taking the time and being here and speaking directly to us. Summer enrichment program was awesome. One of my kids was in it. And I think, did you go to How? Because I think she said she saw you.
Yeah, I was walking around.
Yeah. So I did get a report back on that. She goes, yeah, I saw that guy. The other thing that happened at Howe Elementary during the summer is that Skidmore Tang Museum has an art kit program, and I mentioned it before. And the director of that program, Sunny Ra, actually has been working with different buildings and art teachers to give art kits to students. She also has an entire program of doing art and working with students. They're completely free. It costs us nothing. And when I met her, it was at an event. She delivered an art kit to every fourth grader at Howe Elementary. She also delivered art kits to Lincoln. She's now connected to more students, more principals, more art teachers, and she's looking to get as many art kits into our district. And we're talking kids take home a box of art supplies that they can do projects with, and she does teaching in the classroom. So it's a great supplement. It's also another example how Schenectady is welcome to other groups and organizations to be a part of our learning and to help our kids. So that was really awesome. For anyone that doesn't know, this is Black August. Black August is, I got this wristband on, and look it up. I'm not going to give you all the history. I will give you some of the principles of Black August because they're important. It's unity, self-sacrifice, political education, physical training, and resistance. And that quote happens to come from Cdta Tate, who was a member of the San Quentin Six. Look up Black August, it's dope. The other thing is, I had another one of the community conversations. You can take one and pass it down. This past Sunday and the Sunday before each board meeting, there's a community conversation where parents, students, teachers, community members are invited for an opportunity to come and talk about what are your questions, comments, concerns, or ideas that you have regarding Schenectady schools. So what I'm sharing with the board members is the actual written pieces of paper, each person who attended either in person or online, because it was run simultaneously, both online through Zoom and in person at Central Park. They wrote down what are their top 3 issues, concerns, or ideas that they had, and I said I would bring them back, and so I am, including a copy of those that put theirs online through Zoom. It's a screenshot. Love technology. It broke down into 4 buckets. And the 4 buckets that people were concerned about or had ideas or issues with were COVID, which we heard, as well as funding for both the state funding coming in and the federal funding, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and transparency and communication. The full notes from the meeting, which there was a volunteer at the meeting that volunteered to take the notes and then shared them with everyone. Those notes are available online. There's a folder that keeps all of the notes from any meeting. You can find it on my organizational page, on my Jamaica for School board page. It's kind of everywhere, but it's also sent out by email to anyone that happens to be on the email list that I personally have. And it was just a really great opportunity to make sure that we continue to hear from community members and break down any barriers or walls for them to communicate with us so that we can hear from as many people. And it was amazing to have so many people here tonight. So the next community conversation will be on Sunday, September 5th at 4 o'clock at Jerry Burrell Park, because the location also rotates around the city. And then the meeting after that will be on the north side, and people are submitting suggestions about where they would like to have that meeting held. But it is the Sunday before each board meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The last thing that I have to say today is that I received a communication from someone that said they wanted to make an anonymous comment and didn't feel comfortable putting it through Let's Talk. And their comment is, something I feel may be important information to keep in mind if it's decided to fully open schools next month. Cleaners and custodians usually are assigned to roughly 20 rooms a night. Each classroom can have up to 32 desks, and if we have to disinfect them due to COVID each night, that takes a huge chunk of time out of our shifts. This doesn't include sweeping the classrooms, mopping, taking out the trash, plus any additional events or activities we may have to set up for or repairs needed within a building. So even fully staffed, we would be strained to keep up with properly disinfecting the schools. We are not fully staffed. So I appreciate that they felt safe in contacting me to share the message. The other thing I want to say is that at every community conversation, we make sure that people are aware of every way they can communicate with the district. We talk about the Let's Talk app to talk to your school teachers, guidance counselors, whether it's someone that you feel comfortable with but you don't have direct contact in the district, and that there is a hierarchy to be able to go through, to be able to be in communication and get the answers that you need. And I look forward to us being able to always look for new and inventive ways to hear from those that we serve. That's all.
Thank you. Nolani.
All right, so I believe most of my comments have already been expressed, but I do want to reiterate a couple of them. First and foremost, I do want to thank Superintendent Soler for the weekly brief that you send out. We, as a family, had moved back into the district about 5 or so years back, and there was a huge disconnect. So personally, as a parent, as well as a board member, I wanted to say thank you. I do appreciate it. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think we've heard from others that it's definitely, appreciated, so thank you for that. Again, the Oneida Students for Anti-Racism, it doesn't get any better, the $25,000 grant from the State Farm Neighborhood Assist. I think that's huge. I did vote today, so I'm hoping everyone votes today.
Up to 10 times.
I was going to say, did you vote 10 times?
I put all 10 out there, so please go sign up, register to be able to vote and vote for our students. And then again, congratulations to the 20 students who graduated last week. It was very nice to be able to see them in person, getting their high school degrees. So congratulations to each of them again.
Bernice.
The same. Many of my comments were mentioned, but I'll share a few things. The State Education Department has a health and safety guidance document, and we have it on our website. That really lends to some of the questions in terms of masking and the requirements or recommendations from CDC, the health department, and also state education department. So folks may want to take a look at that because we do have it right on our website. Also, there is, and this also lends to the SEL conversation or comments, we have a free counseling service for students and families, and that's also on our website. I think it's under updates and reviews, but there's an application on the website. It's very short that you can get free counseling. I'm not sure who does the counseling, but there is an application there free to students and families from Schenectady City School District, and I thought that was a great service to our students and our families. I also want to mention that Troy had a fall, I think it's called a Full Fest, last Saturday. And I know it's not in Schenectady, but what I thought was awesome is that many of the vendors that were there were former students of Schenectady who own businesses. And there were many, and I don't want to mention some of them and then miss some, but I thought that was such a powerful thing to see how our students who are graduates are doing some great things, owning their own businesses, and many of those businesses are located here in Schenectady, but they're out there advertising and really helping all communities. So I thought that was a great thing. And the last thing, our first day of school is September 9th. Thank you.
The only thing I have to add, in addition to the comments made, is congratulations to the summer school graduates. I'm sorry I was unable to be there. I think it's the first summer school graduation that I've missed, and so I commend them on their resilience, their stick-to-itiveness, and graduating on time. I actually have your diplomas to sign, so I'll be doing that, but they were given to me tonight, so I will sign the diplomas by tomorrow so that you may get them. The other thing I did notice, Ann mentioned that many of the schools are having open houses. I did notice that there is a specific one noted for the Steinmetz Career and Learning Academy for September 7th from September 8th, I'm sorry, I think it was, from 4 to 7 p.m. And it's for the community to really get to know more about the school and the opportunities that are offered there. Okay, we will now move on to the Cdta Transportation Assistance Program. And we have Al Valkovic, the Supervisor of Transportation, will introduce Jonathan Scherzer. Scherzer, I'm not sure I said that right. Hi. Good evening.
I don't know if the microphone's on now.
Yeah,
so,
you need to.
I don't know if Chris can help you out.
Directly into it.
Check.
There
you go. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Al Valkovic. I'm the Transportation Supervisor for Schenectady City School District. I've been in this position for a little over 4 years. And over the past 3 years, one of my main focuses was to add some additional resources to our transportation for our students. And I started meetings with Cdta that had started monthly, and then it started to break down a little bit, and then finally we ended up getting into, about 5 months ago, we started to have weekly meetings. And those weekly meetings were able to hone down and actually provide a package that's going to be a pilot for us with the new school year with Cdta and our high school students. What we're looking at right now is about 10 routes that are going to be new. They're brand new, Cdta routes, supported for about 500 to 550 students. And as those routes are running in, it will also service our community too. This is a big win for us. It's exciting news. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to John Serzer. He's the director of Cdta. He's going to go through a PowerPoint presentation. He's going to share the information with us about what they're going to offer for Cdta in Schenectady.
Thank you, Al.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the board and the superintendent. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
So it's a great introduction by Al. We do this work throughout the communities across the Capital Region. We do have a couple of other school districts already within our route network. So what we've got here is a very simple overview of the program. But Al is right. It did take probably the better part of 3 years for us to all get aligned. And it takes the work of a lot of folks on our team and your team together to be able to put together something even in the pilot stage that carries 500 students. So I'm not sure who it is. Okay, thank you. So a quick little introduction, if you've got it there on our screen. Cdta is a local company of over 700 employees. As you can see, we cover almost 2,500 square feet. We have 3 divisions. The one here in Schenectady is at Maxon Road Extension, a little bit past Mohawk Harbor. And we have about 300 total vehicles. The next bullet there describes a significant portion of our services. Most of what we'll be talking about today will be fixed route services, but we do have express, paratransit, commuter. You can see we also run the bike share program there, as well as some seasonal services like trolleys and other community programming. And one of the keys to at least our success here over the last couple of decades is being a valued community partner, whether it is providing service for the students here or for helping out community events. Green Market Trolley would be a great example of some of the more recent things we've done in Schenectady. Slide, whoever, sorry, I don't know who it is.
Chris, just let Chris know when you're ready.
Oh, Chris, hey, thanks, Chris. So here's a bit of an overview for the pilot. We are going to provide Cdta branded passes to the 500 or so selected students. That'll be, the district will be determining those eligible students. We'll offer them, obviously, the safe way to get to and from school using Cdta vehicles. But we also have the ability to use it for other things. And I think that's one of the things that separates us and our program is the ability for your students to be able to go to an internship, to be able to get to work if they need to be able to get to an athletic competition. We heard some of the public comment about some of these things, so we're glad to be able to help you all address some of that here tonight. And then looking on further, basically the program is built around getting the kids to and from the high school. These are not buses that roam around all day. These are direct routes built to get the students there 15 to 20 minutes before breakfast starts in the morning and to get them out by about 10 minutes or so after the final bell. Chris, thank you. So status report, kind of give you an update on where we are currently right now. We've just spent the last couple of weeks finalizing routing, and that includes getting the individual stop routes, pickup times for each individual routes. Al discussed that we basically are going to create one route, most likely to be Route 811. And what we've had a lot of success with from the secondary and the high school education arena is to have them color-coded. So you're going to see a map here in a little while. If you haven't seen it already, it'll indicate the individual lines that are part of that route. And we're also putting together the final messaging. We want to be able to share this positive news with everyone. We met with the superintendent about a week and a half ago. The opportunity that everyone has discussed here tonight is real. To be able to do all those things I talked about in some of the previous slides, you want the families to be aware of that. You want them to know what it is that we bring to the table, the increase in quality that we believe we're going to be able to provide for the students getting back and forth and throughout the community. While we work through some of the past scenarios, we're going to provide quarterly passes. So there'll be Cdta branded passes. We actually produced the first batch yesterday, so that was exciting. And they'll be good through the end of November. So what we like to do when we do these school programs is have a quarterly pass that allows Al and his team to be able to manage the students, make sure things are being used properly, and then if a student has continual difficulty with a card or so, we're able to address it quickly and not have it go through the course of the year. And then the last bullet here is we are expecting to get started on the first day of school on the 9th. Thank you, Chris. So why do these programs work so well? Well, we have professionally trained operators. We've been in business 50 years serving the Capital Region. When I say in business, we are a community resource. We are not looking to make the quick buck and do our thing. We're here to serve you and make sure that your students have access, that your sons and your daughters can be there safely and timely. Some of the major components that Cdta brings to the table are in the next bullet. Every bus has 8 cameras on it. So that's an initial starting point. Every vehicle that we own has 8 cameras on it. But we also have the local connection to local law enforcement. And we also have connection with a team of supervisors that can help work and coordinate with Al's team and the individuals at the high school who are going to be responsible working with us as well. And then we also have the ability for the customer tools. So if you are looking for your son and daughter and you know they're on the 811 Purple Line, you're going to be able to find real-time information to find out how far away that bus is from your home, how far away it is from the next stop they need to get to, or when it's due at school or when it's coming from school. We also have a call center that I actually happen to manage. You have about 7 or 8 people on staff any given day, 7 days a week. They're there to help parents talk through, my son or daughter needs to get to Schenectady High School, they take the 811, but what if they need to get to job lot for a job position after the fact? So we can help do those things. I would also call your attention to our social media platforms as well. We're going to be coordinating with the school district on that and make sure that that's another avenue both the parents and the students have access to when they're looking for information, whether it's inclement weather, whether it's a concern on the schedule, or if they have a Regents test the next day, all those kinds of things. One of the biggest components that we've seen over the history of our school programs is setting the code of conduct and getting that established early. We have a generic code of conduct that's available at cdta.org that we've shared with the district. For you, any of the students, anyone in the room, that code of conduct is the same. So we really like to get those established and have everyone understand what it is to be a public transit rider and be able to do it properly and effectively and make sure you're not disrupting some of the other folks if you haven't been used to it yet. Chris? So what did we actually build? So a little bit more detail now looking at it. So it's a new route. I talked about it, very likely to be the 811. In our pilot program here, we're looking at about 25% of the high school population, give or take about 500 students. When I was putting together the neighborhoods we were serving, I didn't realize it was quite that many, but you can see them all listed there. So, Al and Nicole and the rest of their team did a great job of really putting together a sample of your entire service area for the school so that no one neighborhood was left out or isn't part of this pilot program, so you can see them all listed there. I talked earlier about getting the students there so that if those folks who need breakfast are able to get it, we want to get them about 15, 20 minutes early. And you can see we'll leave between 3:30 and 3:40. Obviously, there was some public commentary on this earlier in the night as well. If you haven't seen, because you're probably not fully versed in transit like we are, the TSA extended the federal mask mandate through January. So that is for all public trains, all public buses, all airplanes. So I would expect at a bare minimum that we would expect every student riding from Schenectady High School to have a mask either with them or we will make one available should they get on the vehicles. But currently that is a national mandate put down by the federal government. So we're going to continue to follow that as well. Chris? So some nearby route options. This is another benefit of the network. We talk about being able to get to an internship, being able to get to an athletic practice. But if you miss a bus or you miss what we call these tripper services that are public available routes, you do have some options. Now, it depends on where you live and depends on what time of day. But up there are 3 bus routes that come within a half mile of the high school. So you miss your tripper bus, it's snowing, it's raining, things happen. We all live the life. We've heard a lot of the stories here tonight. These are the 3 backups that come to mind first for your students. And again, we have teams of folks that will be able to help train parents, train the students, and get them to much better understand how it is our network functions and what the true benefits are. I feel like we were missing, the only other thing we had was a map of those routes, but basically we covered all of those.
The board members do have the map, the
Oh,
coverage
okay.
area with the 7 routes. I'm not sure why that version's not on there, but.
And the map, for those of you in the audience, it just basically, there is one route covering most of those neighborhoods we described earlier. So a lot of different colors. And, so we're happy to be here tonight. We're really excited to get this program started with you all and happy to take any questions or hear any comments.
Are there any questions for John?
Yes,
Bernice?
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Slide number 3, you mentioned that there's a direct route. So I'm assuming that other folks are on the bus as well when you mention the direct routes, or is it just the students at that?
Everything that we provide has to be publicly available based on FTA charter regulations. So this will be a publicly available route. The question is, if you as a regular customer who takes Cdta, what's the value in you in this routing that we put together? So there is potential for the general public to be on the bus, but with the end destination being the high school, unless they're going to a house nearby, unless they happen to be doing something that comes along the route that was built to take students to a high school for the most part, That's really the only folks who are going to be on that. And most of our customers, having had experience with students, whether it's college or other high schools and middle schools, they get the sense, they see the writing on the top of the bus, blue line, orange line, red line. They have a tendency to let that go and wait for their regular bus, because the odds are they're going to be standing on the street looking for the 352, the 354, the 370s of the world, not the 811s.
Then the other question I had, this was on slide 4. You had mentioned the passes, the bus passes. Now, how do the kids get the pass? And let's say they lose a pass. What's the process?
It's probably more for Al, but having done this before, I'm going to take it if you want to pass on. But I think they're going to mail out the initial card. Is that right? So they'll mail out the initial card. And then what happens is each one of these cards has a serial number. Okay? So you're provided with a serial number on your card. If you lose your card, and this is where you may actually need to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You're linked in with TransFinder, if I heard that correctly. or
No,
you're
I know
not?
Antonio real well, and they're a great company.
Okay.
But we have different software packages that they provide. They have done really well with the yellow buses. We have yet to align the stars with Antonio's group.
Okay.
And then, John, slide number 5, it mentions their supervisory assistant. Is that someone that is employed by Cdta, or is that a school employee? That's my first part, and then I have another one. It's slide 5, I believe.
That's on slide 5, yes.
No.
Our supervisory assistants is we have a team of supervisors. So when we come here on September 9th, there will be 9 or 10 buses lined up, and you will also have a supervisor in a vehicle. So generally speaking, at least as we get started at the bare minimum, we'll be here every day for the first few months, making sure that the program is working properly. But we also have a network of supervisors out throughout the capital region that are driving. And I've got our Schenectady Superintendent, Joe Landy, here. He's got a team approaching 60 between operators, mechanics, and supervisors. Not that all 3 will be involved, but we have the Schenectady division here to assist with the gentlemen or the ladies that are sitting with the school district every day.
Okay.
Did you have another question,
No,
Bernice?
that's it.
Ann?
Yeah, I just had one question. So these, I'm assuming, these routes are being run only on school days?
Correct.
Okay, and there's no, like, extra route on, I don't know, say a big football game?
No, I think what we work together, what I discussed with the superintendent, is we want to make travel options available to the students so they can get to athletics, so they can get to internships if they need to get to work. If any other the circumstances that make sense, we're really not in the position to say that the card should be used to go to Crossgates Mall on a Saturday night. Those, I don't think, are the things that folks want, so I think we need to work together to message the students to use it properly. But we do have a route network of over 50 routes available during those times that you talked about.
Thank you.
And I think, Ann, our conversation has been, we're going to communicate, we're going to keep monitoring, and if something like that comes about where there's a significant event or something that we can partner with, they do a lot of community type of engagement that was shared with me. So if there's something where they can provide a dedicated bus for an evening event or something like that, I'm sure that they'll be willing to have that.
You can't charge you, that's the problem.
That's right. You can't charge it. That's right.
And there's a variety of options, and I think that the kids will get used to it if they're not already riding, but you want to be deliberate about the program. You don't want it to be a free-for-all. So we try to toe that middle ground of being a free-for-all and being too lockstep.
Noelani?
Yes, I just had a quick question in regards to eligibility. It mentions that the eligible students would receive passes. How is the eligibility determined? And can you walk us a little bit through that?
So eligibility will be the same. It would be the 1.5 miles for the high school student. We also had some discussions today. We had meetings with the assistant principals of the high school, and they had a lot of good suggestions and ideas that I think that we need to toss around that I'm going to bring to Annibal's attention, that we may want to provide some other options for students that could open up some avenues for us. Having all those other routes available to us now is new, so I think we need to kind of go through this slowly, figure it out, and then we can take the starting point and then start to move the goalpost and then make it better for our students, because a lot of people have been talking about this program for the last couple of years, and I think that we can continue to grow this, and it's going to be a huge benefit for our community. our students as a whole. So I'm really excited about this.
Before you put the microphone down, how is equity a part of that equation when you're deciding which students, other than the 1.5 mile marker being the determining factor, how is equity a part of deciding which students are actually going to get the cards?
So I'll take that. So one is we follow policy around transportation that's already been set. So I think the equity conversation is probably one we should have around how we set the 1.5 miles. And, you know, a lot of that, unfortunately, is driven by aid and current policy. One of the things that we've talked about with Cdta is that the equity becomes the conversation around, I need to get to work. How can I leverage potentially this as an option? Now, we don't want to necessarily market like that this is what this is for, but that was important to me when I talked to him about how do we leverage other aspects of our kids' lives. They don't have the photo on this ID. I don't make this claim, but if someone else had to get to work or something like that, potentially that could be something as well. So to the CDTA's credit, they have built in some opportunities for equity and opportunity for it to be used. The goal of this is a pilot, and I want to be clear, we're having trouble with regular yellow transportation. And had this opportunity not come about, it would be really difficult. So credit to Al, credit to CDTA for stepping up and really not quitting on this over multiple years. And we've gotten now to the point to do this. So we're going to always keep thinking about how can we get more kids. You know, for me, equity is opportunity. And so how we get more kids access, how does it align to athletics? How does it align to Saturday programming? How does it align to enrichment? But right now we're starting small with these current runs. There is some freedoms already built that we're going to be real strategic in how we market them. But ultimately, the current kids that are going to get it are going to be based on current transportation standards of distance, 1.5, mile and a half. And then it'd be great to have everybody at some point have that opportunity. But just know that that will probably come later on.
So I guess then the follow-up question, does that mean that currently the number of students who attend the high school and meet that mile marker is the same amount of cards we're getting?
Yeah, so we will have more than...
lives.
Yeah, we're going to have, I think, 550 is the number we mentioned. So everyone that would be getting it would be in that radius on kind of those routes that would be aligned to the 5 routes that come in those maps.
Okay, so that really erases my equity question, because if it's available for the students that are already in that
those,
marker,
right.
Then yay, great. Yeah. I did have 2 other quick points. They're kind of connected. The slide that says, and I think it's slide 5, yep, it's still there, great, that says you have direct contact with local law enforcement, and then also it says the code of conduct set standards for student expectations. Bit of a complicated question, maybe not. How does your code of conduct compare to ours? So where are there, similarities? Or no, they have their own code of conduct for the bus route. So how does it compare with similarities or differences? And in what circumstances are you notifying local law enforcement? And I think about this from our restorative justice practice lens.
First, I want to add that for the students that don't initially get the card, in our relationship and partnership, there is an offer for a discounted transit pass for folks who don't get the card right off the rip, so that's the first thing. Our access to local law enforcement is really based upon the need. So we have a process in place where if an operator is feeling threatened, if an operator is seeing marijuana on the bus, somebody's lighting a cherry bomb, those kinds of things, they're going to call the supervisor, and then the supervisor is going to come in, play their role, and if their role cannot accommodate the need at the time, then we would bring in local law enforcement. It may or may not be a student-based thing, that's just our general policy. Code of conduct, without going line by line, because I don't know yours as well as I know ours is probably a lot more generic. No animals, no eating, no firearms, no guns, no loud music. That's the type of code of conduct things we're having, including, but they'll also then have some disciplinary items that indicate the types of behavior that's acceptable. So ours is, I imagine, a lot more generic because we're talking about all levels of society, where you're talking about a 3 or 4 year gap of students.
So we did have this conversation as well, and to Al's credit, who's been running point on this, we were really clear that nothing happens to a kid without some type of dialogue with the school district, And, John, it was agreeable that that would be the case. And so I want to be clear because that's important for me as well. Oftentimes, we know this is new, and so they do have some universal regulations, and I want to remind people that this is still a public route. So those, they could have an adult that jumps on the bus who lives right by the high school. So they have their rules. They have to interact with law enforcement because it could be an adult maybe attacking a kid, and so we want them to make sure they have a strong relation. But when it comes to kid behaviors, Al will be involved, the administration here at the high school will be involved before a determination is made on a consequence that's aligned to our code of conduct. Now, I will also say that busing, although we provide it, it is important to remind kids it's an important privilege to have to get to school, to make sure they have access. So we want to make sure that we're real consistent with our communication. But at the end of the day, our kids will not get a consequence unless we're involved in the process.
Jamaica, I'll even take it a little bit further. There's two ways this generally happens. One is the school district will come to us and tell us something happened, or we will come to the district and tell them something happened. And in both cases, the first thing that happens is we download video from the bus. So that usually is able to solidify what actually occurred, right? You have 8 angles, and when we talk about 8 cameras, 4 inside, 4 outside. So if a fight starts outside, comes in, we have both. So that process will work itself out, but Al and his team will be making the decisions and helping us work with the students. We don't want to discipline students who want that to come from the district.
Thank you.
I wanted to add also that we have the Dignity, all school districts in New York State follow the Dignity for All Students Act, or DASA, and that also applies to students that are on the bus as well. And we do, and by law, we have to have it on our website, which we do, so that's an important piece too for educators and also for parents to take a look at, which it deals with a lot of the things that we're talking about right now too, and equity.
Erica.
Just a quick question, I swear. Just in terms, because it is a pilot program, is there an already established timeline to reevaluate and see, for instance, athletes? Okay, we're going to start including them. Is there any kind of timeline established yet for assessing the success or not success of the program and maybe expanding?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten that far. First thing we want to do is get board approval to actually implement this, given the timeline that we have, which is why it's before you tonight. I was real clear with Al. The board needs to weigh in on this and determine it. We'll probably use, they're only good, what's the time, every quarterly you're doing the bus passes. Al is tracking, going to be like how many kids lose them, what are the issues, how many kids potentially, if we had any conflicts on the bus that had got suspended from the bus. So I would say quarterly would be a kind of a monitoring. I think in terms of expanding the program, we got to let it run the course of the year first, because we got to be fair to Cdta in terms of capacity. They have drivers, they have, union rules they have to do before they put new routes out, things like that. And I think for us, we need to there's a cost component for us as well. So we need to make sure that we can sustain what we currently have and look to grow it. First for our kids to get to school every day with, chronic absenteeism being a challenge, and then look to expand to athletics, look to expand to other things, again, within appropriate capacity. And I'm not going to speak for Cdta, but they may not necessarily want to go that route right away, so we got to be fair with them. Right, John?
Let's hope not. And I think the hard, one of the challenges for us is the city of Schenectady, the way our transit routes were laid out, did not touch the high school in a significant way. So that's why we're starting with 10. For us, we would love to roll out 30 buses and do all high school this year, but it is a resource-dependent kind of circumstance. And while the yellows and every other industry you can think of is having difficulty right now, we're doing a little bit better, but we're still also in the need. So I think it's smart growth.
That was a really good question about the following this process to see where we're, if it's successful or not. I want to assure you that on a daily basis with all of our vendors, not just with Cdta, I get a morning email that tells me of their level of service, and then we have a scheduled call that morning and we discuss everything that occurred on each and every bus. If there's any issues, I will know about it immediately on those calls. If I personally see a trend or there's any issues, feel rest assured that I'm going to be on top of it and I'm going to address it, and then we're going to move this goalpost down the road, and we're going to make this a successful program. But I'm on this.
John, I believe you've been offering this service in Albany for some time?
Longer than I've been at CDTA
Longer,
11 and
longer than we've been alive.
decades.
Okay. My question is, what lessons have you learned or have come from the Albany experience in doing this? Anything
You're getting
particular?
all of them on display. You know, I think Albany's a little, each one's different, right? I anticipated you all might ask, well, why are we different than Albany? They're all different because of geography and different things. But I think particularly the codes, the color coding as an example. You know, it seems like a small thing when I tell you that the route is going to have 7 legs to it and they're all going to be color coded. But when those color codes are put on the sidewalk at school so the kids know where to line up for the bus, and our supervisor's there to make sure that they go on in a timely fashion, those are the kinds of things we've learned. We'll suggest that having a card system is beneficial for you and for us. We can certainly provide you cards, but we also work with districts who have a card that allows for lunch, access to the building, library, and the bus, all on the same card. So those are some of the things we've learned. I think the disciplinary items we just discussed a couple of minutes ago is what we've learned, is that you really want to work together on it. And the advances in technology in our industry have made it a lot easier. And I think, you know, we talked about students' rights a little bit. I think that's important, understanding that, you know, things happen, people are human, and so you have to see what happened instead of just assuming, oh, the operator must be telling the truth or the student isn't. I think we've had some lessons learned there, and you know, we've really just been able to learn how to build a program. You know, I think Al and Nicole are one of the better teams I've worked with so far. You know, so those are the lessons. What worked well, and you know, we did Cahos for a couple of years. They stopped because they ran out of money during COVID. We're expanding in Troy this year. I had to tell Bethlehem to wait because we couldn't get to do all the service at once. We're looking at Amsterdam. So I think we've done enough to learn and get it right so that people are starting to take notice. I hope that's enough of.
I will say that the coverage doesn't look as complicated as the subway system in New York City.
We always
which
try
is
to make
color-coded, if I recall.
We always want them to look like the subway because that elevates our game. So.
Are there any other questions for either Al or John? Nolani?
Well, I apologize. This is probably more directed towards Annabelle, but do we believe, just based on, you know, some of what we heard during public comment, I know personally I've also experienced some issues with transportation. Do we believe that this partnership is going to assist us with some of the opportunities that have already been raised as to any other contracts that we currently have?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that we're glad that this is here, but we have some vendors that are no longer around.
Okay.
So we're lucky to have this because we would be in a really big pickle with some of our yellow busing because one of the organizations has dissolved, during COVID and walked away. So our hope is that the pilot could hopefully become an expansion, and at some point down the road, if we do this well enough and everything works well, which I can't imagine that both sides don't want it to, Schenectady High School becomes that, which frees up yellow buses to address some of the feedback that you heard here tonight, which we're working on. And just know that I know the parent left, but I'm sure Al is going to be following up with that parent and making sure that there's some clarity. And it may be a systems thing, so it may not even be a transportation. Unfortunately, we have student placements for students with disabilities, and they may not be another class in that building that a kid could fit, due to their classification. So sometimes those things happen, and we have to figure out as a system how we can be more family-centered when we think about programs, placements, and it's equity, right? We then start to see certain buildings have only certain, combinations of students with disability programs. And so we're gonna have to dig through that. I think that issue is a little bit more bigger than just transportation, but I think the parent raises a really big thing, a concern. But I can tell you the yellow busing is struggling everywhere for drivers and for vendors and operators.
Quick question, just because you keep talking about the yellow buses. So if you're one of the students who receives a card and the fun colors are going through your neighborhood, you are to take the Cdta bus to school, right? There's no more school bus option.
Correct. There's no more yellow bus. You only take the Cdta to and from, and they have that card all day. So again, something we want to be cautious about, but I will say it publicly. If a kid had to get home for an emergency, he had to leave right away, they could take that bus pass and get on the bus and get home. And so there are some unique opportunities here. In a yellow bus, you either get in the morning or you don't, and it is what it is. Kid wakes up late, and I think this is the point John was making, 10 o'clock, and we know absentees, still wants to get to school, could take a regular run, and there's some that are close enough to the high school, but they don't necessarily go there, they could still get here.
Does that do it for questions from the board? Okay, thank you, John, and now.
Thank you.
Thanks, John and Al. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
We now have our capital project update. We have Callie and Bob. And I see Larry sitting in the audience. Haven't seen you in a while. Nice to see you again.
Hi, everybody. How are you? It's great to see everybody in person. We had the pleasure of meeting the new superintendent yesterday, and now we get to meet the new board members tonight, so congratulations. It's great to meet you. I'm Callie Gaspari. I'm one of the partners at Mosaic Associates Architects, and presenting with me tonight is Bob Grandy. He's the project manager at Turner Construction, and then our other pals here for moral support, Larry Toon and Gabby Rosario. Go to the next one. Thanks, Chris. So I believe that most of you know we're in phase 2 of a 4-phase long-range plan. Next slide, please. And the phase 1 was mostly focused on the middle schools, while phase 2 is mostly focused on the elementary schools. And we had broken up phase 2 into what we called the group A, B, and C buildings. Group A, there was a little bit of work at the high school and then some work at Lincoln and Zoller. Those projects are complete and closed out now. Group B is at MLK and Woodlawn. Those projects are wrapping up, and Bob will give you a status update on those in a moment. And then Group C, we have C1, which is Hamilton, and C2, which is Pleasant Valley and Yates. And all of those projects are under construction right now. So I know what you really want to hear is where we stand to get those projects done. So Bob will take it from here and give you all of those updates.
Thank you, Callie. As Callie said, I'm Bob Grandy, the project manager for Turner Construction. Larry Toon is our project executive operations manager for Turner Construction. We have Gabby Rosario here, who is our, what I call our Schenectady prodigy. She came up through our Youth Force 2020 back in middle school that we did with the programs there. And then our ACE mentoring program in high school. She is now at Clarkson University. She was a co-op with us since January, beginning of January, and has been a huge asset to us throughout the summer. And we can't wait for her to come back next summer and hopefully beyond that. We figured we'd get her in here and see how a board meeting goes. So back into construction.
Thank you.
Like Callie said, Group B is just wrapping up over at MLK. We are just into some punch list. This is a school or a project that was supposed to go into December of this year. We were able to take advantage of schools being closed partially last year and get ahead of schedule here. So all interior work will be complete for school opening this year. There will be some exterior work ongoing throughout the school year, waiting on some materials, but we'll get that installed here in the fall. So on the inside of the building, just buttoning up some punch list stuff and also getting ahead in some change order work. And we're able to add some additional spaces and some rooms and get those complete as well. So MLK is in great shape, and you guys will come back to a finished interior building. Over at Woodlawn, a similar scenario, a project that was supposed to go into this school year is now complete. This will be 100% complete, interior, exterior, minus those few odds and ends of punch lists and some change order work to get that done. As you can see in these pictures, your temporary classrooms in the gym are now down and is back to a normal gymnasium. Walls are painted, floors getting refinished as we speak. And like I said, just the last minute buttoning up all the odds and ends to make sure you have this building complete when you come back in September. Group C are the big ones, so these all just started in the spring. The first one is PV. As you can see here, the stair tower steel is going up, and a lot of spaces that are being turned over in September are becoming complete. We have a round of those spaces being turned over at the end of this week to the district, and then another round at the end of next week, and really just crunch time, getting everything done, getting you guys back in those spaces and making sure you have enough time to get ready for the beginning of school. Yates, same scenario here. The initial first and second phase are coming to completion here. We're dropping ceiling tile, getting finishes installed, and again, a group of these spaces will be turned over at the end of this week for district move-in, and then another group at the end of next week, and then we'll be buttoning up all the odds and ends, and then moving behind our temporary walls to get into the next phases of construction. Hamilton is in the same boat. Again, into the first phases of construction. Spaces are being finished and turned over at the end of this week, as well as another round of them next week. And then we'll be behind our temporary walls. We'll be doing some exterior work. The elevator in the back, the foundations are up. We're just about out of the ground, and you'll be seeing that shaft come complete for the elevator back there. And that whole kitchen elevator addition will be well underway in September. And the rest of the areas inside the building will be behind our temporary walls and continuing through the phases of construction. A couple of the outside projects, so we had two small kitchen projects, one at Oneida and one at Mount Pleasant. The one at Mount Pleasant is just about complete, finishes are installed, just waiting on the last couple pieces of equipment. So there's a new stove and a new oven that are going in those spaces. They're coming out for their pre-survey tomorrow to make sure the space is ready for them, and they'll be delivering those, and we'll be putting that kitchen back together here in the next week or so. So that's in great shape. Over at Oneida, there was a bit of a delay with the walk-in cooler, so the main portion of that was just to replace some of the old coolers you had in a storage space with a new walk-in cooler. The walk-in cooler is here ready for us, just waiting on the insulation to fill it with. So as soon as we get a date on that, we'll do it. So basically everything we did all the prep work we could. Everything will be put back the way it was, so they'll be using that space the same way they have for the last 5 years. And the minute we get an update on the date, we'll have that walk-in cooler in place. We'll put together a game plan to get that done on a weekend or over a break. And then the ramp, I'm sure some of you have seen this, the ramp was demolished and rebuilt. You can see where some of that exposed masonry is now. They have put the radius caps on top of that, and they'll be waiting for some of the stainless steel rails, and that'll be the last piece of that ramp. So that ramp that's been in disrepair for quite some time is now back up and running and will be ready for school. And then these are just some of the completed projects to date. Some of the Group A projects were Lincoln Zoller, the high school, and then the Mount Pleasant heating job, and then, like I went over, a couple of the outside projects there. Any questions?
I have a question. Bob, by my count, in Phase 2, you've touched 6 of our elementary schools. Could you comment on any HVAC changes that have been made in those schools, please, consistent with the questions we had this evening?
Yes, so every space that we are touching, any renovated space does get new ventilation, does get new outside air. That we have not touched every square foot of every building that we are in, but every new space that we are in does get ventilation.
Bob, is it the MERV 13 filter system?
Yes, yep. Every unit that is in there can even be, it was designed before COVID, but can be updated to meet COVID standards. It can bring in more outside air. It can increase the ventilation. They're all capable of doing that, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Bob or Callie?
I have a quick comment. Every time you said anything about a kitchen, I just got excited for 2 reasons. One, my 9-year-old only let me run for office if we would have better food. And 2, because some of the staff inside our district have said, we just need better kitchens at all of our buildings. Like, we need that space to be able to provide our kids with food. So every time you said the word kitchen, I got really excited.
Yes, and I know Elaine, your food service director, has a master plan here, and she's got some great big ideas.
Yeah, and she's not here tonight, but Elaine is working on a master plan to make sure that we can have quality facilities in all of our buildings so that we can provide good meal options.
Somebody else had a question, and I didn't see it. Bernice.
Last year, you might have recalled, there were some people who were concerned about windows opening, and I know with these new, we're talking about the places where you have been working. Are those windows all able to, move up and down?
The majority of them are,
Open.
yes, and I know Callie and her team do a good, you want to touch on that, Callie?
No problem. Yes, are you saying, are they fixed versus operable?
Yes.
Or, yes,
Yes.
yep. Anything that we renovated, we replaced with either new operable windows, or we had for instance, in Oneida and some of the other buildings, they had operable windows, but they were not functioning properly. So in buildings like that, that had more recent windows, we did do surveys and replaced all the parts and pieces so that things should be functioning properly easily they can be opened and closed.
And then can we assume that moving forward with some of this other new work, that would be the same thing?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. COVID puts yet another layer on every new project as we learn more. Absolutely.
This question may not be yours, it may be more for Anibal, but the getting the furniture back in and that sort of thing, where do
Yeah.
we stand with the ability to
So
do
we had
that?
a pretty productive meeting, I thought, yesterday with the Turner, the architects were there, both Mike, our staff was there, both Mike and Brian was there. And so the goal is on the 20th, we're going to have a phase of a handoff for the majority, and then on the 30th, the remaining work they'll be done with, and we'll be able to fully have furniture returned. And to Turner's credit, they have offered additional manpower to make sure that all the furniture that was out would be back in no later than the 30th, so that they can scrub the floors, get the rest of the rooms ready for our staff to return, because I know that our teachers are anxious to get into the rooms and get their spaces set up. So that was assured to me no later. The majority of them are the 20th, and then the 30th is the last phase.
I do remember a Labor Day or two where we were having people do this work, so.
And if that's what it takes, that's where we'll be. And that, we know it's crunch time here, and we know, like I said, we work with Mike and Brian from your custodial staff, and we know you guys are short-staffed, just like everyone else is. So we're really trying to step up and make sure we do whatever we need to. The contractors are working long hours every day. They'll come in on Saturday, this Saturday specifically at Hamilton, just to help get rid of some furniture, move some furniture, clear out some rooms, that kind of stuff, whether it's new rooms, existing rooms, whatever we can do to make sure you guys are coming back to school the way you expected to in September.
Thank you. My ability to lift furniture is getting more and more limited every day. Are there any other questions for Callie or Bob or Anibal regarding the capital project? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you both.
All right. Now we're on to the superintendent's presentation.
Chris, if you could cue that up. So I'm going to stand, so I'm going to grab a microphone, please. Is this one on, Chris? Test. So thank you those who were able to hang. I'm going to try to hit a couple things tonight. I do want to make a quick reminder. This is day 31 for myself in the community, and I don't say that as an excuse. I just ask for a little bit of forgiveness or flexibility. There is a lot that I've inherited, some good, some great, and some challenges, and some opportunities to do things better. So I ask for a little bit of grace, knowing that this is day 31 for me here. It's my 5th week. So if you've been keeping up with my weekly briefs, you'll receive number 5 on Friday. And I thank you for those who commented on feedback regarding that. One of the commitments I made to the board, and they were really intentional about when they interviewed me and we had some conversations, was that I would be as transparent as possible. And what you don't know is the board gets the same communication as the parents and as the staff, and that is intentional because I want to make sure that everyone gets the same information, and there isn't a, only the board members got this, and the teachers got this, and the parents got this. And so we will work to increase it. We will work to make sure that that happens from our schools to our parents, because I know there's some gaps there with supply lists and registrations and open house. But I also ask you to give them some forgiveness as well, because our principals are kind of at the starting line, not sure what to do yet with this thing of the pandemic and COVID-19. So tonight I'm going to talk about reopening. I'm going to talk about the American Rescue Plan funds and the federal funds. And I'm also going to talk about the Capital Region BOCES audit that was done, a needs assessment on the district, and kind of my response to that as we come in. If you follow me on social media, if you follow our weekly brief, we've been talking about Schenectady Rising. And I think it's always important, I'm a former athlete, to get behind a rally cry or get behind the messaging. And for me, this is kind of my theme. This is the year that we are going to focus on rising up. We're not going to worry about what happened before. We're going to recognize it, and we're going to move up. And we're going to try to get better at everything that we do. And know that sometimes we may fall short, but just know that I'm of the mindset that we're always going to try to find opportunities to get better and work on it. And so as we reopen and continue to rebuild Schenectady City Schools, I want the families and the staff to know that we're committed on teaching and learning, equity and engagement, and efficiency, because at the end of the day, there's only so many dollars to do this work. I always feel it's important to always go back to what grounds us as a system. So you'll always hear, whenever I speak, these things will come up. Whenever you hear key members of my cabinet or people in our divisions, they're going to have these kind of same slides. So I'm trying to model that every time that I do it. But our vision, our tagline, and our values. And I go to our values. They're simple, but they're not simplistic. Equity, collaboration, and learning. And those things are driving the work. The strategic plan was also something that I don't want people to forget about. It's not something that sits on a shelf. The board spent a lot of time, the district spent money on developing this. It's been adopted through 2024. And so this is going to guide my work as a superintendent. It should inform our parents as to the direction that we're going to head over the next 2 years or 3 years. And you know, each of those areas or pillars represent a body of work. And so I will always reference the strategic plan. I'm not going to come in here and abandon it. I'm going to come in here and strengthen it and make sure that we do what we said we would do when this was adopted by the board. And I hope that you see that as we move forward together. So, school reopening and COVID protocols. This is a hot topic because it has to deal with everyone's personal choice, what certain people may believe. I'm not here to debate that. I will never ask you to do something that you don't believe in. But my job is to provide the best opportunity that I can for our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our one high school, and our Leadership Academy, Steinmetz, to bring kids back. What I want you guys to remember is that some of our children have not been in our buildings for almost 2 years. I don't know where that is okay when we know more now than we've ever known about the pandemic, about COVID-19, about the variant, about masking. So I say that with my decisions have been informed with conversations with all the superintendents in the Capital Region. We meet weekly to talk about it. We talk about how we're going to approach this. We meet with the Schenectady County Department of Health, Mr. Brown. And so I want you to know that this was not done in a room by myself, that the information that you see here will have alignment to some of our colleagues in the region, but we'll be focused on in-person learning because it's just not productive to not have kids in buildings in almost 2 years and allow that to continue to occur. And again, I'm not going to argue your personal comfort. I would never ask you to do something you wouldn't be doing. There are options for keeping kids home. They may not be the best, but there are options for doing that. There are some remote options for those who have autoimmune or severe allergies. You work with your medical provider to provide that. But for the rest of those, for the large majority that want to be back in the buildings, we have to create those conditions. And we've done it. So I don't want to excuse you. We've done it. Whether it was a learning pod, a Bridging the Gap program, we were able to bring people together in spaces with masking, with some protocols. You were able to do it. And so I know it can be done. We did it in summer enrichment. Again, will we have cases? We know we will, because this is a highly contagious variant. And so that's why there's mechanisms like vaccinations. Again, your choice. But I'm vaccinated. I made that choice so that I could have some freedoms if I become in close contact with somebody to not quarantine so that I can keep coming to work, to keep serving the community. Those are the decisions you're going to have to make, and they're tough conversations. So, my goal, full return of in-person learning for all grades, 5 days a week. These include reopening with some of the pre-pandemic school buildings, so that means times. We're going to go back to the normal bell schedules that we had before, the normal school experience that we had before, the normal grade level configurations, no more buildings being combined, and some of the feedback that I got in my inbox from parents about, please don't ever do that again. My kids had to go to buildings they had no idea about. Staff didn't feel really valued as well. They felt like kind of they were thrown around, okay? So we're going to go back to the 2019 September, the one that started when we all thought everything was going to be fine, right, until we got to March. We're going to have a restoration of programs and services just as they existed prior to the pandemic. So we are working really hard. Deb Maria is in the audience here. She's our Chief Human Resource person. She's working hard on filling vacancies in every area. All of our assistant directors, all of our district directors are working hard to fill positions. But it's tough. There's just not people out there in some of these cases. And so we're working really hard, prioritizing in-person learning and classroom teachers, prioritizing buildings with administrators that are fully staffed so they can open. And again, a reminder that the first day of school is on September 9th, which is 22 days away, I believe.
Don't want to lose that one.
So I want to recognize, I'm not going to go through all this, but it's ever changing, and we are following guidance from 5 different areas with 5 different recommendations, and every single one of them recommend in-person learning. So we're heard from audience, I heard from participants, heard from parents, let's talk communications, follow the guidance, follow the guidance. None of them say go remote to start the school year. They all say bring kids back with mitigation strategies. And that's the approach that we're going to take here, and that's the approach that I'm recommending with the board tonight. We have no official, there's some change in Albany, so we have no official New York State Department of Health formal guidance. We do have guidance from our local county health department, but I've been working, again, collaboratively with the 23 school districts to ensure that there's some process, protocols, and alignment, and tonight you're going to see some of those.
Those are the 23 school districts in Capital Region.
Capital Region, yes, I'm sorry. Yep,
So
Capital Region.
it's this side of the river.
Correct, yeah, this side of the, you're right. Sorry, I should have pointed that out. I do also want to point out, our county's right there in the little arrow, and unfortunately, we are already in high community transmission based on the CDC. I also want to point out, and again, I'm not here to point differences, we never really used the CDC level of guidance when Governor Cuomo was in place, and we used New York State data metrics, but I do want to point out that even in that one, our rates continue to grow higher, our level of transmission. I think we're like at 3-point-something% transmission rate in the area. So if we're going to follow CDC, the AAP, and the Schenectady public health departments, this is the color that we're in right now. Because of that, these are going to be the protocols that we're going to have in place when children enter our building September 9th, when staff enter our building with children. Our mitigation strategies are going to be a tiered approach. They're going to change based on our colors. So the hope is that we can get back to blue, which means our rules get a little bit less restrictive. We're allowed to do some more things. 3 feet social distancing will be whenever possible because we will be 100% masked. Distance is not a variable when you're 100% masked for quarantining. So I've heard that, like, how do you fit everybody? Well, it's not as much of a barrier to bring kids back because we'll be 100% masked. We'll have, obviously, continue to do ongoing increased cleaning and sanitation. Our staff is spread thin, but we continue to work and try to find opportunities for additional pay, overtime, to try to make sure that we prioritize that. And again, we are trying to continue to figure out different ways to staff our buildings. We're going to remind kids, hand washing protocols. A lot of this stuff's going to need to be retaught when we come back because the kids haven't been in the building for quite some time. So the first couple days of school, maybe the first week of school, there'll be some basic reminders and protocols and procedures being done. We're going to have modified cafeteria plans because we know we can't fit everyone together. One thing I struggle with, and this, again, going back to the guidance, is that 5 individuals could go to dinner at any time, take their mask off, sit together, but our kids could not do that if we had a seating chart. And they have to be so many feet apart, 3 feet apart for lunch. And that'll bring us some challenges. We'll have to have some breakfast in the classrooms, potentially some lunch, maybe modified master schedules to fit everybody, keeping a roster of kids where they're sitting in the cafeteria. But I can tell you, most kids want to be in school, they want to be with their friends, even if they got to talk to them 3 feet away. Assigned seating on the school buses, no more of a restriction of every other seat. You could have 2 kids per seat because you have universal masking. So I want to make sure that's on there. And masking is required and will be required of students and staff indoors. When we open our doors and bring everyone back, we may even explore, some districts announce, I know Capital Region BOCES is requiring that their staff be vaccinated and or subject to weekly testing. We have not gotten there yet, but that is a conversation that we are having internally as well. our chart's going to look like this. So parents, you're going to get a chart that shows you, as we get through these different colors, what are the various layered mitigation strategies. So I'm not going to spend time going through all this tonight. This will be posted. It'll be communicated. It'll be in the weekly brief. It'll be on our website. You'll be able to download it as a PDF. This presentation will be available as well. This is what the chart actually looks like. The board members, you should have a hard copy in front of you if you wanted to reference it to kind of tell you. But basically what this does is it takes you through. So face masks are, again, based on the guidance. If we're blue, they're encouraged for all when 3 feet distancing cannot be a meet because we're in blue. But we're in red. When we open these doors, they're required by all at all times. That is our guidance. Masking required at all by all times. You're going to get a visual, because I'm a visual person. I like to see things a little bit more abbreviated than a chart. So I want to thank Karen Corono's department and herself for putting this together. This is a visual. Same thing, information that's on that mitigating strategy, more of a visual. So masking, social distancing, sports and activities, all in alignment with the guidance from these 4 to 5 sources. And they're going to be hyperlinked on our website, and they will be available. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible. I don't have a medical degree. I'm relying on the guidance to inform me. And so those are the things that we're going to do. But we talk about every area here: special education, physical education class, technology. There'll be signage throughout the building, hand washing. So the principals are going to be getting this information. I'll be meeting with the principals to make sure that there are any questions that they have, any scenarios, because we're going to have to run through some scenarios and make sure that everyone's okay with it. But this will be on there. Again, these are the resources that I use, that we used here as a district to determine and develop this plan. We have change that's coming at the top. I'm not going to read you the quote, but the incoming governor has basically said that there is a potential mask mandate coming probably by Friday. She won't have the executive powers to do it, but the New York State Department of Health has the ability to do it under their current powers. So we expect on Friday, which usually happens, 6, 7 o'clock at night, we get an email, we get some new guidance, and we expect that potentially this Friday there'll be an update from the DOH. But at worst case scenario, she does take office on August 25th, which is before school starts, so you can expect changes to come. Please know we will try our best to communicate anything that is significantly different from the plan of what we're going to be reopening. We sometimes get the information after the families do, because it's on the media before it's sent to us to digest. But I did want to share with you that she feels that it's the only way to make a safe environment is masking. I know it's such a hot topic, so I did want to reiterate new leadership at Albany believes that that's the way to go. Virtual instruction, there have been a lot of questions, and so I want to be clear. The reason why we went with the route that we went at the time that we went was because bringing kids back, I think we heard a young man tonight about social emotional learning. He's struggling being home, looking at a computer screen for X amount of 6 hours, I think he said, or 8 hours. That's the priority. But we do know that we have medically fragile students. We have students with compromised systems. We want to make sure that they had that ability. There would still be Schenectady teachers working with you in that remote option. They would also be servicing kids to maximize, again, we don't have an endless pit of money, so there would be to maximize sections. So for example, if I'm an English teacher, I could potentially have an English virtual section that would have kids with, maybe from Colony or Rotterdam and 3 or 4 Schenectady kids that they would be responsible for. And Shenandoah teacher could be teaching some of our kids in math, English. And I know there's some challenges with that. We heard about DEI and things of that nature. But every district in this region, for the most part, wants to do what's right for kids. And so we have to understand that as we engage in this process, that's why we went this route. It's fiscally responsible for us to maximize our relationship with Capital Region BOCES. We get aid on programming that we maximize with them. And so if for some reason the data tells us more, I think we had about 109 families, or 13 maybe, even submit something without even documentation, just even submit something in the survey to say that they were interested in this. So out of almost 10,000 kids, we had about 109 or 13 even express interest in this. And my fear, because I was 17, 16, 15 at one point, is that if we don't have some parameters around remote instruction, that sometimes some of our reluctant learners just don't want to come back, and that may be the wrong reason to allow that option. I could be wrong, but in-person learning to me is the gold standard for teaching and learning, and I'm a firm believer of that. And I'm an online student for my doctorate, so I struggle with that as well. So,
Anibal, are there, I see Q&A here. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to ask it at this point.
you can have some questions? Yeah, I just meant there was a lot of questions and answers regarding it.
How many slots are available through BOCES for the 24 school districts that are involved?
So we did this survey on purpose so that we can communicate to them what our needs would be. All of the districts did a survey of their families with the same parameters around, you have to have a medical note or doctor's note that had to be, come from the person's pediatrician or, so right now the capacity is, we're going to tell them the number we need and they're going to build the infrastructure for it. The time of that is shrinking because we're getting closer and closer to the start. And so again, we're going to go to them and say, well, first our principals got to go back, talk out to those families, make sure that there's true medical notes, that they have some kind of documentation. We're not going to go back and forth and kind of question the validity of these things, but we need to validate that the 113 are truly have some form of documentation and then recommend those numbers to Schenectady, to Capital Region BOCES. But every district's doing it, and some people had 3, some had 5, but they have the capacity to serve the number we give them, knowing that we still have some skin in the game because some of our teachers will potentially have an assignment in that role. And so we just don't know yet, but there has not been a limitation on the number we can send currently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on remote instruction?
Yeah, so you said there were 113 that expressed interest. What did we do to make sure we reached as many parents out of the almost 10,000 students that we have so that they have the opportunity to actually reply? We typically have a hard time getting responses, right?
Yeah.
And I heard specifically there are doctors that just won't write the note. Even when a child has a pre-existing condition, their answer is they can wear a mask and they won't write the note. So there are children with pre-existing conditions. Their doctor won't give them the note. We need a note for them to be virtual.
Right. Yep. It is a tough, Jamaica, to your point, it is tough. I would say that the board, if they want to make a change to that, you can definitely suggest me to go in a different direction. I want to draw caution to your data from last year. A quarter of your kids came back. A quarter. And so, to me, the damage of social emotional, no contact at all, we don't even know true attendance rates of engagement. A lot of things are hard to track in a virtual environment. And again, for a variety of right reasons, some kids didn't want to turn their video on, some kids, you couldn't find them. We have devices that still haven't even come back. So there's a variety of challenges with the remote, but I would say if there's something that the board wants us to adjust in that approach, please, tonight's the night to make that recommendation. What I would say is there's opportunity to go further with it. I just want to draw caution that it does have implications on staffing as well. So less kids that come in person means less adults needed for in-person learning and different ratios of students to kids, potentially even virtually. And it's a challenge to be a teacher in a remote or in a hybrid situation. I know that much of the feedback that was given around that, but I'm willing to adjust remote as needed by the board. What I would just ask is that we have to be careful that we don't open up too loosely and then put ourselves in a situation where the excuse of engagement of students is because they're remote. And that's what I heard when I got here. What metrics do we have for finding these kids? Well, I'm not going to their house. We're in COVID. I'm not, they can't come in person. So I want to be careful with that, and I don't want to assume, but I know when I drive around, there's a lot of still engagement in the community. There's still a lot of kids hanging outside. And although they may be afraid to come into the building, they're not afraid to leave their house. And I don't mean that disrespectful in any way. I mean that my job is to get these kids in the building, to educate them so we can move them forward. And it is uncomfortable, and it is a tough conversation, but I'm here to make that decision that the priority is to get our kids back playing sports, playing music, playing arts. And so that when we have in-person learning and they don't show up, then our charge is different. You're supposed to be here. Let's get to the house. There's no reason why you can't be here. But want to be sensitive, Jamaica, you're right. There's some doctors that will not support families. Some of our families can't get to the doctors to get the note. And so that is a tough world that we're in. But I want to take us back to 2019. Remote was never a conversation, even we know that school didn't work for everybody before COVID, right? And remote was never an option then. So I just want to be careful that although the pandemic is serious and it is important that we have options for kids, what's more important for me is that we have in-person options. And then if we have to shut down, that the entire campus goes remote versus this model that is too hard to pivot every other day, having kids stream in and out. It just wasn't productive by everything that I can tell in terms of student outcomes. And kids will tell you, Joey mentioned it, I'm not sure how I passed, but I passed all my classes, you know. And so that's problematic. We gotta be honest about that. And so I'll take any other suggestions from the board around remote. You can suggest them tonight. We have time to change them. What I would want to caution you is that people just don't sign up for remote because it's easier for them to keep the kid at home for a variety of reasons, not just pandemic related. Some of our kids were watching siblings, but many of our families are trying to get back to work, and I don't know many families that can get back to work with a kid in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade sitting at home, 2nd grade or 1st grade without some type of supervision. So I'm willing to take any feedback, any questions from the board.
I assume there'll be contact tracing if there, were a teacher or students and so on. What's our ability to respond, the remediation efforts, a classroom and put them into the remote situation or?
Yeah, so that's part of the conversation I have to have with principals to set up the parameters around when a class quarantines, what's the expectation around instruction. Tonight, this is all fresh for everybody. So the next piece is the principals will get these layered mitigation strategies. I will be setting up probably a virtual meeting just to make it easier for them to all participate wherever they are, or bring them all together and do it. But to really dig through, what does remote instruction look like when you have to quarantine a class? Or what is it when 3 kids have to quarantine? How do we keep them connected? We're gonna have to figure out some things creatively. But what we know was that streaming into a classroom while the person is teaching kids in front of the room probably wasn't very productive. Somebody suffered, whether it was the kids online or the kids in person. Bernice, I don't know if you wanted to say something.
Yeah,
Took your
you
mask
did
off.
answer one part of my question. And then the other one, and this is not just Schenectady, I know this is statewide, but what are some protocols that we have in place, or have we discussed any protocols for students who may not want to wear a mask? Because I know, and again, this is not Schenectady, this is all over. Sometimes there can be some very challenging conversations between the staff and the student over the mask, and it kind of takes away from other things that need to be done. So I'm wondering if there have been any conversations around that.
Yeah, so it is going to be enforceable, just like some of the things in our code of conduct. You gotta wear the mask if it's not going to work for you. We do know that some kids want to be in school, just like some of our students with accommodations. They'll have maybe a medical note that says they can wear a shield or things of that nature. Then we'll provide that. Some students can't do that, but we'll provide medical documentation. But the more important thing is that the staff is fully masked as well when they're interacting with that kid, that we create opportunities for social distance. But if a kid's just defiant, it's just like any other type of defiant around, I'm not wearing it, I'm not wearing it. I mean, they're going to come in through the doors. Administration should know, staff should know right away. You don't have a mask, here's a disposable mask for you to use today. If they refuse to wear it, then unfortunately that'll have to address just like anything else around a violation of the code of conduct. So progressively, call home, Johnny doesn't want to wear his mask, could be, hey, I told him that he don't wear his mask. Well, unfortunately, this isn't going to work. We're going to have you pick him up. We have to figure out what the other options are. And, we know there's going to be some challenges with that. And that may be an asynchronous experience for that kid. Well, if you're not going to wear the mask, you're not going to come in, we'll be able to provide you work. You may have to go on Google Classroom or Seesaw if they're a younger kid to get the materials. But it's not going to happen synchronously with the class. It's going to happen asynchronously. And it'll be something that you have to manage on your own. And so we have to still unpack that. And so I don't want to say what it will be for sure. We have amazingly talented principals who will have creative solutions. We'll have some federal funding, when I talk about it in a minute, that I think we're going to use for some extended learning opportunities after school. Maybe that happens in more of a tutoring approach with some of the staff at that building after school, not during the school day. So I'm willing to explore additional opportunities, but just know we're not alone in this, and that the way I try to look at this is the most affluent school district is bringing kids back, and that's a priority for them, then it should be a priority for Schenectady to bring kids back, because our kids deserve the same experiences as kids who may be in a more affluent section.
Thank you. Is there any discussion about having proactive community conversations to talk about why it's important to wear masks and potentially working with the Schenectady Department of Health, because I know that they were looking at having some community conversations so that before that child walks into the building, they have an understanding of this is why you're supposed to wear this mask, and their family has an understanding, so that we're not waiting for there to be an issue, but creating a situation that we're proactive in answering questions so people are less likely to be defiant.
So I'll take the blame again. We just brought this out now, trying to work as late as we can. Principals now have this information. I can guarantee you that our principals in their orientations and as they invite families back into these buildings and in their communications are gonna try to model that. We talked today, Karen and I, about me just doing a Facebook Live and just sitting there reading questions and comments and try to answer them as well, because we know everybody's on social media for good or bad reasons, that everyone's living on there, figuring out that, how to have that conversation. I mentioned it even that when I visited Oneida in the summer program, that masking is probably going to be required, so start having that conversation now. So every time I have an opportunity, I will mention that, but you're right, it's a polarizing topic that we're going to have to keep reminding folks to have that conversation. And even our staff, we've got to prepare our staff to potentially engage with students who may become defiant. I can tell you, most of our kids won't be defiant. They may not wear the mask appropriately, it may be under their nose and things like that. But
unintentionally.
Yeah, unintentionally, yeah. So those are the things that I want to make sure, we're not punishing kids for that. We're not punishing, we're teaching, reteaching, constantly teaching, and providing masks, because I think that was the other thing was, one of the parents at an early board meeting, we're going to have the disposable masks available for fresh masks, because people say these cloth ones, they reference them as diapers. Well, we get a fresh disposable one every day. We could have them, and we have tons of them that we ordered, and we're ordering more.
Ann, you had a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions about vaccination. So you said BOCES is requiring it of all staff?
Yeah, so there's Syracuse City Schools just announced today, Rochester City Schools announced today that all of their staff.
Do we know our vaccination rates of our staff?
We don't know because we're allowed to
Particularly
ask.
our staff in elementary schools where the kids are too young to get vaccinated?
Yeah, so the goal is, I'm talking to legal counsel to see what our opportunities, but more importantly, I want to talk to the Juliet board, the president of SFT, to see what conversations, because I think we have to do this together and really encourage vaccination.
And would we be able to, again, set up with the county vaccination clinics here at the high school for students who want to get vaccinated if they are not vaccinated?
Yeah, so part of our layered mitigation strategy, you'll see them, is saliva testing and surveillance testing as we get into these other colors. And so that's going to be done through the county Department of
And
Health.
by the way, by my count, there are 11 different vaccinations required of students if they start pre-K with us. So,
Yep, you're right.
I can name them all.
Yeah, measles, mumps, rubella, you're right. So there are 11 vaccinations that are typically required before kids even enroll in the school system. So you are correct. And so although this one's not been mandated yet, we can foresee it coming down the road, because I believe they're talking about FDA approval. Once that becomes, then that could become a mandate. So
I'm particularly concerned about teachers of elementary schools where the children cannot get a vaccination yet.
Correct. And we're concerned as well. So I think part of my conversation is around what does vaccination look like for our staff and weekly testing and what are things that we can require. So I do know, I was informed today about Capital Region BOCES, so that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking into for here. But I do want to have that conversation collaboratively with our union partners and making sure that we can do that. And so, but I will tell you that Syracuse just announced today that they are requiring all of their district staff to either be vaccinated or subject to weekly testing. And so that is, again, I think, open it up. Rochester City just also announced as well, same exact expectation. So I believe you're going to see that kind of going across the board. New York City as well. So.
Erica, did you have a question?
You saw me move my bike, Kathy. You're watching it. No, I was just, with the mask thing and kids, and I did some volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club this summer, and their summer camps, they still required masks no matter what. And the kids are really, as long with a positive redirection, remember, mask up, I never saw anybody being defiant, and not that that's not going to happen, but I think it's about how the language we use when we address the children as well, and just reminding them.
So back to remote, if there's other suggestions the board would like us to explore, please let me know. email me, let me know tonight.
I mean, one of the things is, you mentioned there was the one student that showed up and said he and his friends want to come back, but we also had other testimony that there are students who were successful with remote learning. And for us to learn the lessons from COVID that were presented and not just the challenges we faced, that because we used to do something a certain way does not necessitate that we should always have to do it that way. When I saw the quote from our future governor that we cannot have this continuation of this hybrid or work from home situation anymore if we can avoid it, my question to her is why? Because when the pandemic hit, I had to go fully remote. I had to be home with my kids. I was working from home while working for Cdta. I 100% was able to do my job. I did not need to be physically in an office. And there are parents who have that same opportunity. And there are parents and students who are saying, my child does well with this. I think this is a good learning for them to be able to learn this way. There are best practices about being in person. But I'm concerned that we are starting with what sounds like such a strict in-person is the best way, and that is our priority when we've heard from multiple parents about their concerns. And one student who said, hey, I want to be back in class. And it goes back to, who do we hear from and who do we not hear from, and access and availability for individual voices to be heard, as well as us making choices based on best practices and information. And my final point, that we are looking at US recommendations when we live in a global society. So has there been any evidence that we've looked at based on what other countries have done in COVID with their schools and with the variant hitting those places and their success rate of preventing the spread? Because we heard about Florida, and Florida scares me all the time, and we're not doing that, but are there other best practices that we could be initiating that aren't US-based but are still relevant to our work?
We're open to explore them, and so I appreciate the feedback. And again, I look for more dialogue around this, but just know that tonight, that is the direction that we're headed.
Well, I'm concerned about the number of parents who may not have registered their kindergartners yet. We've had problems in past years with that. And I know that it was lagging at the end of June. I just don't know where it stands at the middle of August.
I can get you an update on registration numbers. I'm more concerned that we have more kids than we have buses for right now.
Well,
so
all of this feeds together, obviously.
To me, the problem is trending in the way where everyone is coming back. Today at district office, there was a line of folks coming in with kids registering and making sure they had the right place, the right location. So I don't know how folks functioned with children home to try to provide a living. I know some people can do it, but the majority of our families had to go to work in order to provide. And so I think many of our families are excited to get the kids back. I think they want information like, what's my schedule, give me school supply list, when is orientation. I think now some of that stuff can start to happen. So I can provide the board a registration update.
I just was curious and wanted to emphasize the need for people to get registered. 22 days is better than 2 days or 2 hours.
Correct.
Which is what has happened in the past. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, though, because it's the first time that this has happened, it's historic, the pandemic, there isn't a lot of research out there. There's conflicting research, but there's really no solid research whether remote learning actually is beneficial for our students. But again, I think it's because it just happened, so it's going to take some time for those, the researchers to really do a deep dive. And that's across, not just in the United States. That's globally. I'm not saying it's not out there, but there's not a substantial amount of research to support it or not support it.
And we're dealing with not just the research of how children learn best as individuals and having those opportunities, but also the added bonus of dealing with the Delta variant and us ensuring the safety of our children while they're learning. It is a delicate balance. I do not envy you. Just so you know, there is no envy over here,
But,
that this is the challenge.
Yeah, and I will tell you that a decision had to be made, and I made the decision. We do have current board policy that empowers me to make this decision during the pandemic. I've been asked by parents, how do you have the authority? And board policy that says when there is a communicable disease, I have to make decisions to prevent the best health and safety of our students and families. So this is the decision that we are, but just like anything else, we're going to monitor, we're going to adjust, and if there needs to be an adjustment, we're probably going to be told what the adjustment is, and we've been asking for state guidance, someone who's more informed around diseases and things like that to be more official. And if we have to go remote because we don't have the staff to do it, then we will go remote. What I don't want is that we're remote one week and in person the next week. We got to have some consistency not only for our children, but for our families. And so if something were to change, we will continue to try to communicate. But just know that right now the decision was made to bring our kids back in person, offer this remote option for those who have a medical documented concern, and know that not discrediting anybody's fears or anybody's personal choice and freedoms, but with all of that comes consequences and tougher decisions that you have to make as a family. And I don't want to lose kids in Schenectady, but then homeschooling may have to work for the year because you were not in agreement with maybe our approach. That's a family decision. That's not a superintendent decision. It's not a board of ed decision. But just know we want your kids in school. We're going to do everything we can to keep them safe. You will get layered mitigation strategies. You will have us following the county department, the CDC, everyone. So there isn't a perfect answer. We're all struggling with this, but this is the plan moving forward.
You did mention the vacancies that you inherited, and I strongly want to point out that you inherited those vacancies, had nothing to do with those vacancies. But it also reminds me of the comments about the fact that we are not up to full staffing for our cleaning. Is there an update on how far behind on staffing when it comes to janitorial and cleaning staff? Because one of our commitments is ongoing increased cleaning and sanitation, but we have workers that feel as if they're not at capacity to get that done.
22 days is our magic number, but I will get you an update from HR. We can provide you with current vacancies, that we have in the district. The biggest challenge is getting people to work, to come to work here. We're competing with a lot of people looking for work. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the hourly rates at some of our fast food and some of our other places, which, they're getting $20-something an hour. So those are decisions that we may have to come back as a group, but just know we have a workforce who has been here that would not benefit from some of those. And so we have to, it's a fine line. But our challenge right now is finding people to come on board. We have the opportunities, we have the ability, and we talked today about potentially looking at the Albany job fair coming up. It was in the Times Union. So exploring that as another option for an in-person recruitment event, on the spot kind of hiring. But again, open to ideas, but we can provide the board with an update for vacancies.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to move on to kind of the last two pieces. Obviously, the first one that was most important was reopening. So we are required to provide a district comprehensive improvement plan. I want to thank Carmela, she's in the audience, her leadership on this. She's been a tremendous asset for us and for me as I transition in. She's kept this work moving. We're responsible for developing a plan that addresses leadership systems, curriculum, instruction, social emotional learning, family engagement. You should have the full plan, but I gave you an abbreviated version tonight in here that kind of focuses on our priorities. And we heard some feedback around the abandonment of diversity and equity. It's in our priorities. It's there. It's in our strategic plan. And I made the commitment to the board that it would be there, that would be my focus in everything that we do. And so culturally relevant, rigorous, and responsive curriculum is a district priority. It's what we're looking at when we buy curriculum. It's what we're looking at when we have professional development. It's the conversations we have with restorative practices. It's looking at our SEL curriculum that we're looking at. Removing barriers to increased attendance and engagement. It's been a historical problem here. So looking at parent engagement individuals. I talked about potentially launching parent centers, which will fall under one of our new individuals in the district, making sure that we have some type of parent liaison. What a unique concept tonight. We should have an advocate at every building that can interact. And these things will feed into some of that federal funding. We'll have to find some of that dollars to use it, but that's the right use of that money, is to do some of these things. And I will dig into that. We had some, and the last one again is not curriculum, but instructional practices that are culturally relevant, rigorous, and responsive. So working with our teachers on, wow, what does that mean when you deliver instruction? How inclusive are you? What kind of text are you doing with kids? What's the conversation? Do kids see themselves? I had a final interview with a choir teacher today and said, well, what kind of music are you going to plan to do with our kids? Because they don't not all necessarily come from a Eurocentric background. So how are you going to include them? And so to hear some of his answers was, choir, thinking about soul music, spirituals, and what does that play? Singing songs from other languages. I mean, how powerful that would be for some of our kids. And so that's the approach here. Every school has a sub-plan that also feeds into this. We had some student and caregiver input meetings and surveys. There was an admin brainstorming session in June that drove this. Again, Carmela led a lot of this work, so I want to make sure that we recognize her in this effort. And then some of the strategies here, and I'm not going to go through them all here. You have them in front of you, but these strategies, we bought an evidence-based, culturally responsive curriculum to support. We're doing some auditing, some building of curriculum units. We built a middle school elective course around citizenship and activism. That was organically driven. That was part of the schedule change that the board supported around last year in your budget, adding the period and bringing some additional staff. So there's some intentionality by the system to do some of this work across the board. Questions on DSIP? No? American Rescue Plan, we were giving, and everyone knows this because every district was given some funds from the federal administration, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. We were given $41 million. That doesn't happen in 1 year. That is rolled out over the next 4 years. So we have to build a plan. And we didn't necessarily have a plan that had input from schools, school building level leadership. So last week, every school principal was charged with meeting with their BLT, their building leadership team, which should have some parent voice, some stakeholder representation, and developing a list that would respond to these non-reoccurring expense areas in the following areas, which is listed out for you. The list that we're going to have to present, because it's being combined now, all the schools have a wish list of items that meet these areas about safely returning students, maximizing in-person instruction, operating schools and meeting the needs of students, purchasing educational technology, addressing the impacts of COVID-19 on the students, implementing evidence-based strategies to meet student social emotional. We were doing some of these things, but this funding is going to allow us to do some more things. And I want you to know that the feedback and the input came from the principals. It wasn't myself and members of the executive team that said, here's how we're going to spend $41 million. This all came from them. We're compiling the results. We're going to break them down into each of these 6 areas, and then we're going to post it. We're going to post the plan to the community so they can see it. And if we can get as granular as school by school, we will do that so that people can see specifically what will happen at each school. But we have the dates they met with their groups, the people who attended those meetings, and we can share that with the board if you want as well. The last piece was, the last 2 things, which I think came up tonight in some of the comments regarding athletics, was offering evidence-based summer, after-school, extended learning, and enrichment programs. We know that's a priority for our kids, and we know it's a priority for our district. And so we're going to have to look at ways to expanding access to sports. And with that is a facilities conversation. We just put out a bid, which most people won't know, but it's on our website in our purchasing department for a building condition survey that needs to be done. Because the plan that you're using now is based on one that's over 5 years old, and actually phase 1 started, I think, in 2011 for you guys. And so we're almost a decade beyond that initial long-term master's facilities plan. And we got to have a conversation as a board with myself and the district, but also as a community around making sure we have the right facilities for our kids to have great programming. We have a great Boys and Girls Club, but the field at Mount Pleasant doesn't look so great. And so we want to make sure that there's access for those kids as well. And then early childhood education is really big, looking at what we can do. Obviously, pre-K, we continue to expand our pre-K programming. But again, what are we doing with parents, with students? How are we teaching literacy? How are we teaching numeracy, parenting skills? Things like that may not be. And that's that last bullet. So principals in each of their schools with each of their building leadership teams provided us ideas, suggestions on everything that they would love to see to help meet those areas. And so our hope is that we can use that $41 million to meet those. And this is kind of a breakdown here of that $41 million. Some of it has to be used for what the state has determined as learning loss. So that could be something like Saturday programming, summer school program, online credit recovery, a variety of things that we're going to have to offer. So I like to show this breakdown so people understand that the money is broken down. Even though it's $41 million, there are some rules around where the money can be used in the various buckets. My last piece tonight, before I close, and I know I've been going for long, but I hope it's been useful for everyone, is that when I came on board, there was a Capital Region BOCES needs assessment done on the district. It was about 20-something page. Credit to the Board of Education for being extremely transparent, posting it online, letting the community read it. But it was part of my charge coming in here. And one of the things that came up in there, there's many things in there around mistrust and communication and various things, was an organizational chart. And so I'm going to get into that specifically. But the purpose of the needs assessment, so the community knows, was to have a strong desire to impact a positive influence on the school culture, fiscal environment, and the constraints that, as a result of COVID. And then one of the goals was to recruit and hire a new superintendent, and so here I am. And so the needs assessment, they met confidentially with 150 people, and I want to make sure that it wasn't every employee, but it was 150 employees. So there's about a couple thousand employees in our system. But members of the leadership team, administrators, teachers, people personnel services, union representation, food service, transportation, facilities. They also looked at our organizational chart, and they also made some recommendations, and they looked at regionally within the 24 capital region districts what folks are doing for similar sized school districts. And they made some recommendations. And so our current organizational structure looks like this. And I had shared with the board around making some changes to that organizational structure and enhancing our work in order to support schools, elevating our positions to be regionally competitive, and the board has been extremely supportive in that approach. And so we have a current one and then a proposed one, and there's only a slight difference. Most of the differences are changes in titles to recruit new talent to the community, to promote existing talent within the community, and to support our schools, which is the crux of the work, is teaching and learning, supporting principals, supporting teachers. And so you're going to see a little bit of a different layer there with some executive directives for elementary schools. We want to recruit and bring staff who have done the work in elementary schools to support our elementary school principals. Same thing with our secondary school, our middle school, our alternative program, our Washington Irving, Steinmetz, and our high school. And so this is what's coming for you. Tonight, the board will be considering the appointment of some of these positions. I'm excited. They are in attendance. I've asked them to be present, as that will be the expectation that they be at board meetings moving forward. And so as they get approved tonight, I would afford them an opportunity to at least introduce themselves and address the board. Any other questions?
I just had one comment. I learned today that our school-based health centers are set to come back into the high school and into Mount Pleasant, serving both Mount Pleasant and Hamilton. And I think they're waiting for some DOH approvals and so forth, but I thought that was good news as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that because this was something that was mentioned earlier today, that the equity position wasn't totally eliminated. If you look at your graphic organizer, there's an assistant superintendent, innovation, equity, and engagement.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, I wanted to elevate that work. I also wanted to support the current individual who's there, who you will also be approving tonight. Their formal appointment has done a great job kicking off at Page as the principal, has done some really great engagement. He's excited to be there. He's looking to do some equity work right at that building level, which is critical. But yes, the equity work is still at the cabinet level, which means it's important. But there's also innovation there. So part of that work there, and the gentleman that will be considered tonight to be appointed will be charged with parent centers, community schools. Again, that's a new concept for our community, but working with the My Brother's Keeper initiative. Athletics falls under innovation, equity, and engagement, which is a change for this organization because I wanted to make sure that all kids had access to sports, curriculum, after-school programming. And again, for me, equity is the driver there, but so is innovation to provide opportunity to support equity.
My understanding wasn't that the parent thought the position was gone, but that they were all vacant. And so they were concerned that there was nobody available.
And there is some truth to that because there are some vacancies that we posted for that fall under that division to do some of those. Those are positions that the board approved as part of the budget process. We have them posted, but they have not interviewed until we appoint somebody to do that work. So there is some truth to that.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention, because this is not just from the needs assessment, throughout the years, we've heard comments about the line of communication, right? That there's some gaps and there's some areas of growth for us. So I noticed on your chart I think, and Claire, you can correct me, but to kind of help with that, you have the executive director of elementary schools. So there's a point person for the elementary school principal, teachers that they can report to and have some communication with, and you've done the same thing with the secondary schools. And again, this is not just staff. I've heard this actually from the community, and we've actually had people at the board in the past mention that line of communication. So, and again, if I'm wrong, please, chime in.
You're right. It's an extremely intentional design. It's not hierarchical where those executive directors are over the assistant superintendents, but I wanted to show tonight you will also be approving who I think is going to be a phenomenal deputy superintendent for Schenectady schools. That person's charge will be working with those two individuals to make sure that we're responsive daily to schools, that they're out there visible. These people are not going to live in central office. These people will put a lot of miles in their car visiting buildings, supporting principals, figuring out what our challenges are and what we need to do as a system to support them to do the work they need. So you're correct. That is going to address that.
Thank you.
I take note that we've been at this 2 hours and 41 minutes. I would entertain going into a 5-minute break so that we can come back. Is anybody willing to do that? Or feel it not necessary? Whatever.
Anyone need to stretch their legs or go to the bathroom?
Whatever. We'll take a 5-minute break. 9:47. One more minute.
So we're camping in Maine. I won't have any internet or anything.
To return to their seats, and we will resume our meeting. Are you okay, Chris? You got us back on. Thank you,
Jamaica's
everyone,
just
for
coming.
staying with us.
Oh,
And
Jamaica's coming.
I see Jamaica on her way. So at this time, we would begin the business portion of the meeting. Not that we haven't been doing that, but we have the annual adoption of our code of conduct, and we have a resolution approving the revision of the code of conduct, and so I will accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Noelani? Is there any discussion?
I just have a question. I was wondering, how long does it take, and you might not know the answer, you just got here. How long does it typically take the team to come up with the code of conduct and other big documents like this? And the reason I'm asking is I'm still concerned about our ability to then, like if it takes this long to put this thing together, how much time are we investing in making sure the community actually gets to see it, to have an opinion on it? Because I know we didn't get a lot of feedback on this or the safety plan. So are we doing anything differently to actually reach parents and students and community members so that they have the opportunity to read through it and make comments?
Yeah, so I think there's always the ability to comment anytime throughout the year, whether it's, again, sending emails regarding it, displeasure. Usually we get, if something happens in the building, there's additional feedback on the code of conduct. Typically the work is they have a shell and they keep tweaking, updating, revisiting, and so the committee does work on it. Andrea, she's not here tonight, she's on vacation. She can probably give us more details on it, but there's always opportunity to comment on it. It doesn't have to be a commenting period, but I think we need to get better on the educating the community this exists. Here's where you find it, help us interpret it. So I think there's a huge opportunity to do it better. And so I think you're right on both. Even the school-wide safety plans, sometimes people look at the titles and just don't want to look at it because they think it's boring. But these things are extremely significant because they impact their kids.
If I can just add that we did a major
I was just gonna say the
revision of the
same
code
thing.
of conduct 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
And that was quite a lot of work involving a lot of stakeholders. I think it took pretty much the better part of a year.
Yeah.
The entire,
And so
it
this
was
since
entirely
they're just some
restructured.
small
yeah.
revisions.
Yeah. That's when around the time that we adopted restorative practices, SEL, when we were talking about the school to prison pipeline. So it was a huge undertaking as Ann
Trauma-informed
and.
practices.
Yeah, actually, some of those were in place, but then we put them in the code of conduct. So it was overhauled immensely at that time. So I would call for a vote. All those in favor of this resolution to adopt the code of conduct, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we next have the district-wide school safety plan adoption, and we have a resolution approving that. I'll accept the motion to approve that resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second, Erica.
Erica? Any discussion around the school-wide safety plan? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have the building level school safety plans adoption, a resolution approving the building level school safety plans. I'll accept the motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Ann, second.
Second, Erica.
Erica. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have a school comprehensive education plan. We have many school comprehensive education plans. That's a plural. A resolution approving those plans. I'll accept a motion to approve this recommendation.
So moved, Erica.
Erica, second.
Second, Bernice.
Any discussion around the school comprehensive education plans? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have an adoption of the 2021-2022 school district clarified calendar and a resolution adopting the clarified version of the 2021-2022 calendar. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. Nolani?
Noelani, second.
Second.
Ann? Any discussion around the clarified calendar?
I just wonder if we could put graduation on it. I mean, we know that's graduation, but it's kind of nice to list it. Kind of a big goal.
Karen, you want to, we'll add graduation?
Graduation.
Was
Let's add
it-
graduation to the calendar.
So I guess my question is, it says to clarify the color coding, so what is different?
Yeah, yeah.
that
So great
made it
question. I'm
better?
glad somebody was asking that. So basically, in the beginning of the school year, there was some color coding that was inappropriate in September that confused employees whether it was a day off or a day to report. Karen, was it the 2, 3? Right. Correct. Right.
That's awesome. I did also notice, and I don't know if other people noted it at any point, that Juneteenth is officially a holiday, and it's on our calendar. What up? The other thing I notice is that it says, it's up in October,
Indigenous people.
Chris, is that it's Indigenous / Columbus Day, and the same thing with Thanksgiving Day. There are schools and states that have just gone and changed it. Columbus is no longer on their calendar at all. I happened to look it up because I was curious. So Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, and South Dakota switched completely. In May of this year, Randolph School in New Jersey voted unanimously to replace it with Indigenous Day. It was back in 2016 that Plattsburgh schools here in New York State changed the name after sixth graders from a social studies class actually said that they wanted it changed. And then the school district did a survey of Native American communities across the country. And the same is true of Thanksgiving Day. These are 2 days that are historically harmful to Native and Indigenous people, and the history behind it, with our focus of being anti-racist and inclusive. I think that we need to have a conversation about it just being Indigenous Peoples' Day, and that Thanksgiving, which is recognized as a day of mourning for Native and Indigenous folks, that we consider renaming both of those on our calendars going forward.
So Jamaica, I would just say there is a calendar committee, and if those are the direction that the board would like us to start to go, you are, at the end of the day, the approver of the calendar and the things that we recognize. What I would say is that we probably should think about venues for community engagement. So on a personal note, we did this in Buffalo, and there was a large Italian community that came out for Columbus Day because it was what they were able to celebrate, part of their culture. And again, not to disagree, but we were actually surprised. And so they worked with the students who were advocating for Indigenous in Buffalo, and they were trying to figure out a happy medium. I don't think it ever got settled, but I do know that Columbus Day was something that the Italian-American community really clinged on to. So I think, to go back to something you always hold us responsible for, is community engagement. So I think we can probably start some committee work, if that's what the board would want us to do, around exploring name change and honoring different groups. We put Indigenous Peoples Day because it is important to us as our works. It's not an official adoption in terms of the board, but it has been part of the anti-racism work in the district.
And it's not the first time we've had this discussion as a district.
Okay, great.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting the clarified calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Student placements. We have a resolution approving the placement of certain special education pupils. I'll accept the motion to approve that resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Second?
Second.
Ann? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have certain personnel items. We have resolution approving consent items 12A1 to 12C3 concerning certain personnel actions. I'll accept the motion to approve those items.
So moved.
And second?
Jamaica.
Any discussion?
Congratulations, Patrick.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Now we have Resolution 12C4, ratifying an agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Al Tompkins. I'll accept a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Second, Nolani.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're all in favor. That carries. Resolution 12C5 ratifies an agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Alexander Majira. I'll accept the motion to approve this resolution.
So moved, Erica.
I'm sorry, Erica?
Yeah.
Couldn't quite hear that. Second?
Second.
And any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries. We have a resolution 12C6 ratifying a memorandum of agreement between the Schenectady City School District and the Schenectady Federation of Teachers Paraprofessional Unit for paraprofessionals and school-related personnel. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second.
And any discussion?
I was especially pleased to see this, that that there's an opportunity to give this compensation to our paraprofessionals that work so hard.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. We have Resolution 12C7 authorizing the assistant school business official as an additional user of the district's P card. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And second? I'll second it.
What's a P card?
It's a
credit card.
Credit card.
It's a purchasing credit
Yeah,
card.
it's a purchasing card.
And it's only as a
Purchasing
result
card.
of a
We
vacancy.
have too few people vacancies.
Yeah.
We have purchasing leaving. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have Resolution 12C8 approving a waiver of the 48-hour rule with regard to the appointment of an acting purchasing agent. May I have a motion to approve this waiver?
So
So
moved.
moved.
And second?
Second, Nolani.
Nolani. All those in favor of approving the waiver, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So we have the resolution itself, Resolution 12C8, appointing an acting purchasing agent. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. And
And, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Second?
Second, Erica.
Erica? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. We have Resolution 12C9, requiring a waiver of the 48-hour rule with regard to the approval of the employment agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Lynn Rutnick as Deputy Superintendent of Schools. May I have a motion to approve the waiver?
So moved, Bernice.
Second, Nolani.
Bernice, second, Noelani. All those in favor of the waiver, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So we now have Resolution 12C9, approving Lynn Rutnick as Deputy Superintendent of Schools. I'll accept the motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. Second, Bernice.
Second, Bernice. Any discussion?
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Yeah, if we,
All those, we'll do the
Yep.
vote first. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we welcome Lynn. Where'd she move? Oh, she moved over
yeah,
here.
if Lynn can just come to the microphone and just,
Lynn Rutnick as Deputy Superintendent of Schools.
we want to welcome you to Schenectady, Lynn. Those of you who don't know, Lynn is currently City Superintendent Lake George, who has been, so I'm extremely excited to have a veteran as a superintendent willing to be my right and left side as we do this work to bring Schenectady up. And so I want just Lynn to say a couple comments to the board, and as her introduction, we only get to do this once, so welcome to Schenectady.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to express my gratitude to Superintendent Soler for his confidence, as well as the board. I'm excited to amplify the message of the superintendent and the board, and do the work ahead with a great amount of commitment to servant leadership and joy. So thank you. I am so excited about the journey ahead. To say I'm all in would be an understatement. So thank you so much. I feel honored.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Resolution 12C10, requiring a waiver of the 48-hour rule with regard to the approval of the employment agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Dr. Carlos M. Cato as the Assistant Superintendent of Innovation, Equity, and Engagement. May I have a motion to approve the waiver?
So moved, Nolani.
Noelani,
Second.
second, Ann. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. We now have Resolution 12C10, approving Dr. Carlos M. Cato as the Assistant Superintendent of Innovation, Equity, and Engagement, and I'll accept a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second, Nolani.
Noelani. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries, and we welcome Dr. Carlos M. Cato.
So good evening. Like our deputy, I'd like to also thank the board, thank our superintendent, Annabelle Solar, for this opportunity, and also thank our board as a whole, from our president to our vice president and all commissioners. I'm extremely excited for this opportunity. Looking forward. Today was a great day to just listen and kind of get an understanding of where our students are, where our families are, as well as our teachers. So my goal is to come in, listen and learn, and look to continue to do the work that's going on in this district. I do see that Schenectady is full of resources, and my goal here is to connect those resources to our students, to ultimately see our young men and young ladies go to college and career. I mean, have the opportunity to succeed in areas of college and career. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos.
We welcome your family as well.
Yeah.
I see
Yep.
3 up and back.
So we will be putting out an official press release for both our deputy superintendent and all the other individuals that will be appointed tonight. But, you know, Carlos has extensive background in athletics, and so that'll be a really big part of his work. I know we heard tonight around our facilities. He's currently a principal of a bilingual school, so I think you're going to be excited, things that Carlos brings. And tonight, the board also approved his wife as a school psychologist here in Schenectady, Shane Cotto, who's there as well. So we welcome her to the district.
Sorry, I take it I mispronounced your last name. Koto, is that correct? Okay. Forget the second T. All right, we have Resolution 12C11, requiring a waiver of the 48-hour rule. May I have a approval to, for that waiver?
So moved, Erica.
Erica, second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, that carries. Okay, so we have this Resolution 12C11, which approves Andrea Tote Freeman as the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services. I'll accept the resolution, a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved, Nolani.
Nolani, second.
Second.
And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we recognize that
She's in Vegas.
Andrea, oh golly, I hope she doesn't win too big. But maybe I do hope she wins big, I don't know.
I just will say, Board President, that this does recognize, one of the things I learned really quickly is Andrea gets the work done. She has a great division, and so this does recognize her and elevating her within the organization. So I thank you guys for the support on this.
And I'm glad she's getting a little vacation here. Resolution 12C12 requires a waiver of the 48-hour rule with regard to the appointment, to the approval of the employment agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Sean M. Mason as the Assistant Superintendent of Planning and Accountability. May I have a motion to approve this waiver?
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second, Nolani.
Noelani. All those in favor of the approval of the waiver, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Now we have the motion itself, 12C12, approving Sean M. Mason as the Assistant Superintendent of Planning and Accountability, and I'll accept the motion to approve this resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second, Nolani.
Noelani. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries, and we welcome Sean Mason.
I will, before we let Dr. Sean Mason speak, I will just want to reiterate that he's been back and forth to Schenectady via the airplane over the last couple of days, 100% committed, excited to have him on board. Extremely talented young man. I think he's going to do some great work. He's coming out of Baltimore Public Schools, so large urban system. He's going to bring some great things for us here in the planning and accountability. So, Dr. Sean Mason, say some words?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you to the school board and superintendent.
We need you to talk a little bit louder, please.
I want to say thank you to the school board and superintendent for having me come in this position. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I am excited to move the work of the district. Period. I'm excited. The key buckets of work include looking through everything that I do in my work through an equity lens, which includes supporting schools with improving attendance, decreasing core course failures, and reducing suspensions. Perusing the data, of course. Providing equitable outcomes for students is what I've been tasked with doing, and that's what I will do for this district. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and welcome. And we have Resolution 12C13, also requiring a waiver of the 48-hour rule. May I have a motion to approve that waiver?
So moved, Erica.
Erica?
Yes.
Second?
Second, Bernice.
Bernice? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we have Resolution 12C13, approving Joseph R. DiCaprio as the Executive Director of Elementary Schools. I'll accept the motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And
Second, Bernice.
Bernice? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we welcome Joe back to the district.
Joe, before you get started, I sent Joe a text last night when we got to a final agreement and we got a plan. And I do want to recognize the efforts of Deb Marriott, who's done tremendous work for me in a short amount of time. So thank you, Deb, for making this stuff happen, and I apologize they came late to the board, but we did want to respect the privacy of these individuals in their current districts and make sure they can tell their communities as needed. But my message to Joe was, welcome home. So welcome back, Joe.
Thank you, Superintendent Soler, and to the Board of Education. It truly is a welcome home. I would first, once again, like to express my gratitude to all of you, from Superintendent Soler to the Board of Ed, to everyone in this room. We are a community-based school. We are a community-based organization. I'm a proud 1995 graduate. I debated sharing the year, but I went with it, of this high school. I walked across the stage. I sat in these chairs alongside our current children. And it is my honor, I'm humbled to be here in front of you, and it is my promise to each and every one of you to serve as a pillar of support for every child, every family that we serve, and it's support. We will bring back positivity, we will bring back energy, and hashtag Schenectady Rising will be what we live. That is my promise to you in this role. I'm beyond excited to come back, and the sky's the limit. So you have my deepest sincerity and gratitude, and let's let the work begin for all of our kids. Thank you very much.
All right, we're moving on to the business items. We have a resolution accepting the treasurer's report for the month ended June 30th, 2021. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And second?
Second, Erica.
Erica? All those in favor, or is there any discussion? I'm sorry, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And so this is the report on which the audit will now begin, or has begun. Maybe it has begun, right? Okay, just wanted to check that out. A resolution accepting the Central Treasurer's report on extra classroom activity accounts for the month ended June 30th. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved, Bernice.
Bernice, second.
Second, Nolani?
Noelani. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have a resolution authorizing the refund of certain taxes. This is one of our favorite resolutions. Pursuant to certain court orders, I'll accept the motion approving this resolution.
So moved, Erica.
Erica, second.
Second.
Ann, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have a resolution approving the agreement between the Schenectady City School District and the Schenectady County Chapter of New York State ARC Incorporated. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And second?
Second, Bernice.
Bernice? Any discussion?
This seems like it'll be a great opportunity for our students.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that resolution passes. We have a resolution approving the agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Fiscal Advisors and Marketing. I'll accept a motion to approve this resolution. I'll make it. We need these people to help us get our finance bans and so forth. How about a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We also have a resolution approving the agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Aura Carrington and Sutcliffe LLP. I believe they're our bond counsel. Correct. So may I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Erica.
Erica. Second?
Second, Nolani?
Noelani. Any discussion? We need them too. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And we also have a resolution approving the agreement between the Schenectady City School District and Mediation Matters. I'll accept the motion to approve this resolution.
So moved. Bernice?
Bernice, second.
Second, Erica.
Erica? Okay. Any discussion?
Just a quick question, because this is the first time I remember seeing this. Do we do this annually?
No.
No.
we did not.
Yeah, so, again, changing some practices before. This did not necessarily go to the board in the past, and it should have. And so you will start to see many professional service contracts come through the board, because at the end of the day, the agreement is between the board and the person providing the service, not the superintendent. But in the past, that did not necessarily occur. So this is a change in practice.
I just have a quick question. I noticed that Oneida doesn't have a representative.
Yep, great question. They made a choice not to share, but we have some federal funding, so we're going to explore, and Board Member Erica asked the same question around Oneida as well. So what our hope is that we can use some of that federal funding, and maybe Oneida even put in there, they'd like to have that. And so as we look through their list, we may be able to add one in. It's about $20,000 to get one over there, so our hope is that we can do that.
Mediation Matters, if I recall, does a number of our restorative circles.
Correct.
And is part of that program.
How long have we had the Mediation Matters in our district?
Oh, 7,
Yeah.
8 years, I think.
Yeah, they constantly have like yearly renewals. They're a sole source provider, and so they have some documentation to do this work. But yeah, it's at least probably, I know I was able to find at least 4 years consecutively that have been here. And again, that was just quickly looking back.
Are there metrics of like how many students they engage in a year? Is there a survey from students for feedback, since it seems like they're working directly with our students?
They also train, they do some peer group training for the students. I've heard a presentation outside of the school district, and so they have that.
Well, what I can do is have Andrea send you some of their information, but they do have it in the evaluation capacity on their portion. They do trends for referrals, circles, data, types of circles, number of students served. They are having some of that work done.
At this, we could even put it on as an agenda item in the next few months as they get back in the schools, because of course they weren't here last year either, so.
Were there any services during COVID, so they weren't able
Not
to
of this nature
even?
that I'm aware of.
No, they didn't have a contract. Many of the service providers were not given contracts.
Okay, all those in favor of the contract with Mediation Matters, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. At this point, unless somebody knows something I don't know, we have a second opportunity for comments from board members. Anyone have any comments? All right. And I do have one comment. The board is doing a board retreat this Saturday for 4 hours, about half a day, from 8 to 12, and that's just part of our own professional development and growth as a board. You know, I believe this is our third meeting together in the last 2+ years, well, 18 months, the last 18 months, other than one we tried last year. So this is what we're hoping to accomplish and actually get to know each other a little bit better. So I just wanted to make that announcement. And at this point, if there's no further business to discuss, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
And that's Noelani. And second?
Second, Bernice.
Bernice.
It was a
She
fight
had 3 feet out the door. Forget social distancing. She was already gone. Okay, all those in favor, please stand up.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion carries. And thank you all for sticking with us. Our next meeting is September 8th. We haven't always done it the night before school started, but that is the night before school starts. So,
that's awesome.
You might want to stay and you might want to make sure that we're definitely still having it, depending on how desperate things are. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, board.
Oh, right.